name is Larry Zbyszko, wrestling's living legend, proud to be a WWE Hall of Famer, and still the recognized AWA Heavyweight Champion of the world. Going to talk about my career on Great North Wrestling, and I can't wait to see everybody there. The Big L.
Okay, so I know you were a wrestling fan growing up, but what was your childhood like, and how did you first learn about pro wrestling?
Well, you know, my childhood was like the normal Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, early. I was born in 1951, raised as a kid through the 50s, and it was a good childhood. It was the birth of television. So I was a generation that, you know, was watching television. We had 3 channels. But the shows that hooked me back then were like Superman, Zorro. There was something about good guys kicking evil in the ass and saving the maiden in distress. I mean, something about that got to me, which later on down the road, it was one of the reasons professional wrestling got to me. So as I was a kid, that was kind of like what was, you know, getting my interest was, you know, that kind of feeling of being some kind of superhero and save the day and all that. And then plus the first day of first grade, I'll never forget the first day of first grade. Halfway through the day by lunchtime, I realized that whatever that teacher was selling was a crock of crap. I had wanted nothing to do with what they were trying to brainwash me into the system with. Second half of the class, after lunch, I kept looking out the window watching a bird. Flying this branch, flying to that branch, doing whatever it wants. And I'm thinking, I gotta get up at 5:30 in the morning, put on these clothes, hop on a bus, be told to shut up, sit here, be told to shut up, listen to this stuff. I'm looking at some guy nailed to a cross bleeding at 6 years old. That's a good brainwashing gimmick. And I'm thinking, I just want to be the bird. Just stay out of my existence, because this is nonsense. And then as I got older, I realized more and more I was right. And that's another thing that tied into professional wrestling, because you lived outside the system. You were kind of celebrity status, but doing your shows at night, sleeping and traveling during the day when everybody else was at work, and you know, and then so that kind of led to being the pro wrestling. And it's the closest you can get to being a superhero in real life. Yeah, yeah, basically. And then when I was a teenager and saw Bruno for the first time, he became my hero. Because he was the perfect example of what I wanted to be, you know, since a kid. Here's a guy that, I mean, for his day, he looked ridiculous. Super giant chest, you know, 5'11", 275 pounds, you know, like 14, 15-inch wrist, big bone guy, big powerful jaw, had that classic Dick Tracy broken nose with the big cauliflower ears and looked like a gorilla. And the bad guys were even bigger than he was, you know, George the Steel and Ivan Koloff and Bruno. Billy Graham, what are your thoughts on him, just as you just almost mentioned? Well, he's a different story, I'll tell you in a second. Okay. But then watching Bruno picking him up and throwing him through the air and beating up the evil guys, you know, became my hero, and so that's what I wanted to be. Billy Graham was, he was the kind of guy that came in at a time when the old school was kind of going away a little bit, and then there was a new era starting. And Billy was a great, I guess you'd call him a showman. You know, during the interviews, very colorful character. And in fact, Hogan and some other guys stole a lot of stuff from, you know, what Billy Graham used to do. But Billy Graham in the ring was, you know, colorful guy, big guy, and then if you hit him, man, he was moving and going, and he was a good showman. Do you think it was a mistake when they took the title from him when he was so hot and put it on Backlund? Well, I do, because I know what I was there at the time, and I knew what the story was. And that's one of the things that really led to the big feud with me and Bruno in Shea Stadium, was the fact that when Backlund beat Billy Graham and wound up with the belt, the heavyweight champion of the world, in the eyes of the fans in those days, was Bruno. You know, that gorilla guy. And Backlund, who was a good guy and a great athlete, but he looked like a little kid. He was, you know, such good shape. He only weighed 220, and came off in his interviews kind of like, oh, how you doing? You know, I mean, howdy doody. And the people who were used to a Bruno kind of hero are now looking at Bob Backlund going, oh, come on, man. And poor Bob just couldn't follow it. And in the meantime, that meant Bob's fans were looking like empty chairs. And the business of the WWF, money-wise, was starting to tank.
Because I think Graham holds the record for most consecutive sellouts, and Bruno holds the record at Madison Square Garden for overall.
Oh yeah, for all time.
I think even for music and
for years. I mean, it was amazing to run 16, 18 years. But that's because it was programmed right.
So how popular was wrestling in those days when Bruno was champion and you were growing up?
Oh, it was super popular. I mean, all they had back then was a little TV show on at midnight, and back then I think the wrestling promotion had to pay the TV channel to put the show on. But with Bruno over in the way they promoted it, because you didn't see Bruno wrestle every week on TV. You had to pay the $10 to go into the Garden or the Omni or the Spectrum or where, you know, the big match was. And if you didn't draw money, we didn't eat in those days. It was different than today. But people actually loved Bruno. I mean, the mentality of the human race still tended to believe whatever they saw on television. Still were naive to certain things. And you can see the difference from today, where like even with the Donald Trump president thing, people aren't stupid anymore. They're smart to everything, and that includes lying, crooked politicians. They're throwing them out. They'd rather have a WWE Hall of Famer as the president than a politician who they know is a crook. So the people mentality back then, they really loved. When Bruno got bloody in the ring, people in the audience had heart attacks and died. Little old Italian guys were carried out on stretchers because they were so emotionally involved. And that's what led to the hottest kind of feud of the end of that era of the old school with me and Bruno, was when Bruno broke his neck and, you know, couldn't do it. And then Billy Graham wound up with Backlund. Backlund wound up with the belt, and the business was dying. I knew the people weren't ready yet for Bruno to be gone. You know, he broke his neck. It wasn't planned. And I knew, I could feel it, and from everything I was taught, you know, by Bruno and the other guys over the years, if I could, whoever talked Bruno into making one comeback would be the hottest thing in wrestling, because that's where all the publicity came out of it those days, with the magazines all over the country, and you became a big star wrestling Bruno in the Garden. And I came up with this idea, and then I called Bruno, and it was, you know, a headbutting, and then some headbutting with the McMahons, because in those days the heels were 300 pounds, big scary guys, and I was 240, Bruno's protege, you know, the good guy. So the McMahons were kind of leery of it, didn't know if I would get over, because they're the ones that, you know, if I don't draw, I don't draw, but they're the ones stuck with the bill and had to pay for the Garden. And so, but it worked out, you know, it worked out great, because I was right. People wanted to see when Bruno came back and I stabbed him in the back. It was the hottest thing. I mean, it blew wrestling away. We broke records, plus Shea Stadium, which in those days was unheard of. You know, if there were pay-per-views in those days, it would have been the biggest buy rate ever.
Right.
And then, if you look at the history of it, we didn't know back then.
And just for the record, it wasn't Hulk Hogan, as he said in his book, that drew the crowd.
No, Hogan, he puts himself over for doing everything. I mean, Hogan's day, it wasn't even Hogan. It was, Hogan couldn't follow Bruno either. It was Hogan, Macho, Roddy Piper, Jimmy Snuka, yeah, I mean, Macho. I mean, there was a group of them that had to be there, not one guy anymore. So,
well, I will ask you about that match in detail, but before I get into that, how did you first meet Bruno? Because I know you were an amateur wrestler, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a pro, so I started wrestling in Pennsylvania. Had an early program. I started in 8th grade. And then I wrestled in high school as state champion. And when I was 16 and got my driver's license and my first piece of crap car, I found out through my mother, who did some volunteer work at the church, Bruno's address, because his kid went to this school. So I had Bruno's address, and once in a while when I went that direction, I'd go out of my way a little bit, because Bruno only lived a few miles down the road from me. And I go off the main little road, down a side road, which led right past Bruno's house and backyard.
And where was that? 'Cause I don't think you've actually
in the North Hills of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And so I would like drive by his house once in a while. And one day during the summer, I was driving by his house, and he has this big giant row of hedges on the side. And you could hardly see through them. But for a second, I caught a glimpse of Bruno standing by his pool getting a suntan. And I remember I went, oh my God, there he is. I mean, my hero. It was like seeing Superman in real life. Or, I mean, it was, you know, my hero was standing right there. And I don't know what came over me, because I'm 16 years old, little zit-faced kid. And I stopped the car, and I got out, but I'm on the side, like you'd have to walk around the whole house to get to the gate. So I didn't know what to do, so I started crawling through the hedges. And I crawled through the hedges, and I'm making this racket, and as my head's popping through the other side of the hedges, I can see Bruno turning, and he goes, what in the hell is coming through my hedges? And here comes this, kid, this fan, and I'm surprised he kept a straight face, because he's like, oh, Jesus Christ, my God. But here come, and I was very polite, oh, Mr. San Martino, and he was very polite, very nice, guy. And
covered in scratches and everything.
Yeah, I got thorns on me, and leaves, and, my hair's all messed up with twigs in it. And but that's how it started. I introduced myself, I was very humble, and he was very nice, and told him this is my dream, and we talked, and I'm not really sure, I don't remember exactly, but then I think he said, well, if you see me in my backyard sometime, stop by, we'll talk, and we talked a couple times, and he was impressed by my amateur wrestling thing. And
did he give you permission to ring the doorbell the next time? Or did you
I just drove by his yard.
Okay.
But then we started to take a longer story short. But then we started working out in his basement, because he had weights, and I did his workout, and that's why I kind of resembled him, because I did the same workout he did, which was a lot of heavy chest. I mean, when I weighed 240 in his basement, I benched 465.5 pounds.
I guess his only son would have been a kid at this point.
Yeah. The one son was, yay big, and then the two twins were babies.
So you do your weight workouts together?
Yeah, so I started working out with him in his basement, getting him looking. He, helped me get in and smarten me up to the psychology, which is kind of a lost art today.
What was his strength like in those days?
Oh, even in those days, at one time he held the record, the bench press record, at 565.
Right.
But at that time he only weighed 265 pounds. Later that record was broken, but the guy who broke it weighed like 500 and some pounds, and in those days probably gassed to the gills. In Bruno's day, when I started, you never even heard of that stuff.
Right.
That came in, the next generation later.
And he was very against that.
Yeah, he was very against it, because the guys who were getting looked at were these guys that looked ridiculous, but they didn't love the business, they weren't wrestlers, some of them weren't even good athletes, they just looked ridiculous.
Of the world.
Yeah, I mean, they had that surrealistic look that Hollywood was getting into, but in terms of being a talent and a wrestler, they sucked. So that's what the part Bruno hated it, and the legitimate athletes got kind of overlooked for the guys that would do that,
Would he ever smarten you up to the business in those days?
It took a while before he started smartening me up.
Did you must have suspected it, I guess.
I hoped it was, because I didn't want to get beat up by these big scary bastards.
So what led to your actual debut in wrestling? I guess he was the only one that trained you, I suppose.
Well, Bruno was training me, and then there was a guy named Guido Mongol. Oh, God.
Wasn't he partners
with Tatry.
Okay.
He was partners with Joe Beppo.
Wasn't one of Demolition involved in that at one point?
At maybe one point, but there was a guy before him.
Okay.
Who's Beppo.
Even Nikolai Volkov.
Nikolai, yeah. Nikolai and Beppo, they were the first Mongols.
Okay.
But Bruno owned a little territory of Pittsburgh.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, see, the WWF had all their stuff, but Pittsburgh was Bruno's town, and he ran Pittsburgh on, and then some little high schools on the weekends.
So the Civic Arena was his.
Yeah. So I got my first matches in Bruno's little territory, like in little high schools in the middle of nowhere. That would still have 3,000 people in them in those days. And that's how I kind of learned, under the radar and stuff. But then Newton Tantry, Guido had a little ring set up in his barn, and he bought the Pittsburgh territory from Bruno.
Okay.
And then so me and Bill Eadie, who was one of Demolition, me and him and another guy used to go to Guido's farm and work out with each other in the ring Guido had, and, you know, practice moves and stuff, you know, together. And then 20 years went by. I didn't still see Bill Eadie since then for 20 years because we were always in a different territory. But
what was he like as a person?
Who, Bill?
Yeah.
Oh, good guy. Yeah, Bill, good guy. And for a guy that was, you know, when he was in his prime, he was a big guy. You know, 6'4", 280, and he could boom big bombs. I mean, you know, Bill was good.
Why do you think they're not in the WWE Hall of Fame? Just the legal issues Bill has had with WWE over the years? Or?
Oh, I don't know. Is this? I don't know. The only thing I heard is there's a group of guys with some concussion thing.
Yeah, I know he's part of that, but a lot of people have been asking why Demolition isn't in.
You know what? To be honest with you, there was 10 years of wrestling I missed.
Right.
After WCW went under and the wars were started, I had kids at home. Wrestling was getting a little raunchy, so I turned it off, and wrestling wasn't on in my house, and I missed like 10 years of it. And then when I got back with them was maybe 4 years ago.
Right.
And so there was like 10 years of things I missed, and I don't remember really what some guys did or what their...
It's probably better that you missed that 10 years.
Yeah.
So I understand the first place you worked outside of Pittsburgh really was Vancouver as a territory?
Well, yeah, I started to run Pittsburgh in some little shows, and then I was going to get the promotional break and the push as Bruno's protege. But Bruno wanted me to learn more and be, you know, more polished, because as Bruno's protege, that was, you know, getting people's attentions, and people would have expected you to be good because you're Bruno's protege. You can't make Bruno look bad.
Right.
So I had to be good. So he sent me out to Vancouver for 6 to 8 months. Gene Kaninsky was running it with some guy, and I went there to do matches. We worked almost every day, and then that was kind of like how I learned and brushed up and got polished and got ready to come back and then premiere as Bruno's protege.
What was Kaninsky like to work with?
Oh, he was a cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, a funny guy, good guy, but yeah, crazy guy. You know, I remember, you know, from what I remember, it was, you know, fun being there. And the politics were always on my side. I didn't realize it at the time because I was just having a good old time and learning. But being Bruno's protege opened a lot of doors for me that other guys would never have open.
Right.
Everybody was nice to me, took me under their wing, like Strongbow and Monsoon and Skolins, and the guys that normally wouldn't, because they don't want you to take their jobs. They don't want you to get over. They want to be over. And it's a closed shop. But because I was Bruno's protege, everybody was nice to me and opened doors to kiss Bruno's butt.
Right. Did you come to Florida before or after your first WWF run? Because I was reading your book, A Story with You and Bill Watts.
Oh, I was in Florida for almost a week.
Okay.
But again, I think I was in New York for a while. And then back in those days, the territories, you do all the towns. So after a year or year and a half, you know, people see you a lot. And you don't want them to see you too much, because after 2 or 3 years of watching you, it's like, I like this guy, but it's the same guy. Anybody new? You know, it gets stale. So once in a while, you'd leave and go somewhere for 5 or 6 months or anything, and then come back, and then you're fresh again. So Bruno called up Bill Watts, who was booking for Eddie Graham, and wanted me to go to Florida for a while, to get out of New York for a while, and then come back again and do some Bruno protege stuff. And the thing about Florida was, it was the only group in that day who had a television show that showed in Long Island. And so one territory show showed in another territory, and everything else didn't. You had, you know, separate. So the deal I had with Bill Watts was, I'll wrestle in Florida, but on television, I gotta look good, because I can't make Bruno look bad because it shows in New York. So to make a long story short, I went there for a couple of days. We come to the first TV show, and I'm booked against the Mongol, who was their #1 heel. And I'm thinking, gee, I'm going to get a good break, or this is going to be trouble. So I got what they wanted, like, you know, to have done, and I went to Bill Watts and said, Bill, I can't do this on TV. This was the deal, you know, make Bruno look bad. So Bill went, well, I'm going to have to fire you. So Bill Watts fires me. But in the meantime, Eddie Graham, who runs the place, hates Bruno, because Bruno threw Eddie Graham and Buddy Rogers' neck click out in New York in the old days. Because Eddie Graham saw me and he went, oh, you're Bruno's friend, huh? So I knew I was dead. So anyway, so Bill Watts fires me, and here's the funny part. Jim Cornette ran the territory of Georgia with the new TBS show starting in Georgia. And
Jim Barnett.
Jim Barnett, yeah. And the Omni was just built. And Jim Barnett had wanted Bruno to come down and be on the first Omni show. Worked out a deal with Vince, and Bruno agreed to do it, but he wasn't happy about doing it, didn't want to do it, didn't want to fly away and all that. And when Bill Watts fired me, because Eddie Graham told him to, because I wouldn't go along with the program, Bruno used that as an excuse to cancel out of the Omni, because he didn't want to do it. So when Jim Barnett found that out, I got a call like the day later. I mean, the grapevine was like this: what the hell did you fire Bruno's kid for? Now he won't come to the Omni. So I get a call from Barnett that flies me up to Atlanta the next day, Saturday morning, to meet with him and offer me a job. And I get 7 in the morning, I get there, and there's like all the guys passed out, because they had like an 8 o'clock live TV on Saturday mornings. It was an early show, you know, and the night before they had a show, so the guys were all passed out. And one guy, Bearcat Wright, was a manager in Florida and a manager in Atlanta, and he was there when I told Bill Watts I'm not going to do it. And I was very polite, going, excuse me, sir, but I just can't, that wasn't the deal, I'm sorry, you know. Right. So now we're in this little room, bunch of guys. Bearcat Wright sees me come in, and he stands up, and as Bearcat Wright stands up and starts talking, Jim Barnett and Bill Watts come out of a hallway and are standing right behind Bearcat as Bearcat yells to all the guys, hey guys, this is the kid that told Bill Watts to go F himself. And Bill's standing right there. And no one laughed, because they all went, oh Jesus. And Bearcat's going like, no one popped over that? And he went, oh, and then he saw Bill Watts standing there once. So Bill Watts and Barnett take me in a room, and Jim Barnett goes, oh, you're a good-looking boy, and I'd really like to have you work here. I'll give you $500 a week, which back then was decent money for a beginner. And, you know, but he's doing it only to get Bruno to make the Omni. So I wound up with a job there, and now Bill Watts says to me, and he's made to apologize to me, so Bruno will be happy. And
because he told you something that Bruno lied to you, which Bruno...
Yeah, because he said something, no, Bruno lied to you about that deal. I went, no, that's the deal. But then Bill Watts looks at me and he goes, I'm sorry, I had to fire you. You're a good kid, I'm sorry. Eddie made me do it. And he's biting his tongue because he wants to kill me. I mean, Bill Watts is an asshole, and he wants to punch me out. But he has to apologize so Bruno will come to the Omni. So you could say, oh, he hated my guts. It was great. I mean, he was an asshole, and he was proud of it. I mean, he was a guy that he screwed up, you know, the WCW stuff for a while, pushing Eric Watts down your throat. But at the same time, you know, you got this big corporate structure that had no idea what pro wrestling was. And you got Bill Watts running it, and he was up on the, like, I don't know, 10th floor or whatever, 14th floor. And he's standing on his balcony, and he's taking a pee over the balcony. 14 floors down below him is the food court. I mean, and then the violence, plus the language he used, you know, to belittle, you know, and you can't do that in corporate people, to talk the way he did. So, I mean, the TBS people after 6 months were horrified and finally got rid of him.
Did you work with Ole Anderson at all?
Oh, yeah.
What did you think?
Oh, yeah, Ole was running Atlanta, and I liked Ole. He was good. And he liked me, but I was good, and I was, you know, he was, oh, a fellow Polak. So, Ole was a good guy, and it was fun to work for.
So that first run you had in what's now WWE, what are your memories of that, coming in as Bruno's protege, and the crowd reactions and everything like that?
Well, at the beginning, I mean, It was great because I did a little teaming with Korea, and I was Bruno's protege. But the biggest thrill of the whole thing was at the end. You know, I mean, when Bruno came out of retirement, and the way that was set up week after week after week, to where the fans were so sucked into it. And then when I stabbed him in the back, I mean, these people freaked out. I had death threats. Police would be calling my house, telling me not to go here, not to go there. I had to, like, you know, hide in trunks and be driven into buildings. I was overturned in a taxi cab with rioters trying to bust into a cab and get me out. Shot at, leaving an arena. The bricks above me, you hear a big pop and the bricks above me shattered. I can feel the bricks hitting me in the head pieces.
What was the worst of all those fan attacks? I know you were stabbed.
Stabbed was that was the worst because I had to get a tetanus shot. I was with Putski in a match, and something happened, and I did something to him, and everybody was pissed. And they came in the ring and jumping down, and I jumped out of the ring. And back in those days, I mean, the more crazy you acted and swinging, the better chance you had of making it through a crowd because they didn't know what was going on. And they had 4 cops, and this was, I don't know, maybe they had 4 cops, you know, that was security. And as I got out of the ring, was walking, some guy punches me in the face, boom! And I grab him, and when you bastard, I went to hit him, and as I went to hit him, he fell to his knees. So I kicked him in the face because he was down, and out he goes. So the 4 cops who were supposed to be around, because there was no fencing in those days or barriers or anything, just seats that were flying through the air at me. So the 4 cops there grabbed the guy I just knocked out, and they're dragging him out, and now I'm alone, surrounded. So I'm swinging my way around, and I feel this thing on my head bink, and I look over, it's an 80-year-old guy hit me in the head with a steel crutch. And I said, no, I can't hit that old bastard. But he fell over after hitting me with his crutch. And as I was going, the people just stampeded over him. And then it felt like someone kicked me in the ass, like a bruise or a Charlie horse. I'm like, damn it, I spun around, I'm swinging. I finally make it back to the dressing room, and Arnold Skolin, who runs the show, was playing cribbage with somebody. And he goes, hey, it sounded good, kid, how'd it go? You know, that's how much they care. And I went, yeah, it went great, but some bastard kicked me right in the ass. And I put my hand back here because it was sore, and I feel something. I go, what in the hell is this? And I pull out a blade about this long. And it was a long, skinny blade, like those wooden Japanese knives that would go together. It was like someone stabbed me in the ass, and when I turned around, I broke the blade off, the handle. So I said, oh my God, it's a knife. It's like, you know, so you're gonna get a tetanus shot. Because there was an old trick in the old days where some people would put knife blades in food and let them sit for a few days and then take them out, because if they cut somebody,
like
you would get a bad infection, you know, from all the bacteria.
So these were premeditated attacks that these people
oh yeah, people they hated me. I mean, it was a feeling. If you could take the audience of today back and put them in the Garden in 1980 and feel what the crowd, you know, it would be night and day. You know, I mean,
And you mentioned about the cab getting flipped over. Who had to pay for the damage to the cab in that situation?
You know, I really don't know what happened after that. I mean, if anything would happen, it would be probably the cab company calling the wrestling thing and say, well, your driver drove off the ramp. I mean, we're not responsible for it. You know, I mean, so that's probably their insurance wound up getting stuck with it.
And you had something like 17 grand in your trunk.
Oh God, probably more than that. But yeah, I went to a period where I wanted cash before I went in the ring, because we had some headbutting going on.
Yeah.
And so, after 3 big, towns, I had a whole bunch of cash in my trunk going down the highway. And I got this goofy girlfriend who was a beautiful psychopath that was trying to figure out how to steal it. You know.
You briefly mentioned her in your book, but what was so psychotic about that girl?
Oh, she was insane. I mean, the most beautiful woman you ever saw. Striking. I had a little convertible, and every time I took the lid, lowered the roof, I did it 3 times on this road, someone would wreck their car. Because they would look over at her, they couldn't take their eyes off, boom, they'd hit the guy at the red light. And it happened 3 times. But in those days, there was no phones, they couldn't keep track of you. And something weird happened with her, like, you know, I'd be on the road and then I'd come home, and as soon as I come home, everything I owned was on a bonfire in the front yard. And I'm going, what the hell is this? And I'm going over trying to put the stuff out, and she comes screaming by in this white thing at 3 in the morning with a rock, runs over, smashes my windshield of my new Cadillac. I'm going, what in the hell? You know, I mean, are you cheating on me? No, what are you talking? I mean, just this weird, stupid stuff. But then the next couple of days later, she paid for the new windshield. She bought me new clothes she burned. So, you know, she'd never do it again. And then, of course, she did it again. Yeah, so finally it was.
And do you think the highlight of your pre-Bruno run was winning the tag team titles with Tony Gurria?
Probably in those days. Because it was a funny story. It was interesting because back then there was no contracts.
Right.
You got your 2-week notice. And me and Gurria were in a locker room one day, and Gorilla Monsoon comes in, and he says, "Oh, Tony." At first he used to call me and Tony Heckle and Jekyll, and we all called Bob Backlund Howdy Doody. So Monsoon comes in and goes, "Oh, Howdy Doody," and Bob turns around and goes, "Yes." And Gorilla goes, "Oh no, I don't mean you, I meant Heckle and Jekyll." And we go, "Yeah," and Gorilla says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you this, but you got your 2-week notice last week." So, what, so we're finished in a week? You know, that's the notice we got. So me and Tony look at each other and they go, what the bloody hell? So, you know, we got a 2-week notice, he forgot to tell us, and next week we're not booked anymore here. Well, 3 days later, me and Tony wind up winning the tag team championship of the world against the Lumberjacks.
Yeah.
So we stayed.
Because that would have been scary, right? You're out of a job.
Yeah, we out of a job, and 3 days later on TV, we wound up booked with the Lumberjacks, and then we won.
And when were your matches with Abdullah the Butcher? Was those when you were still a babyface?
You know, I don't remember wrestling Abdullah.
Okay. Apparently, it's on the internet that I guess.
It is?
Not the video, but it's on the internet that you apparently wrestled him.
You know, I really don't remember.
It's also on there that you wrestled Killer Kowalski.
Yeah, I wrestled Killer Kowalski at least once.
What was he like?
He was a character, you know, it was funny because he was a vegetarian. And then he was into some religious thing about reincarnation, so if you were sitting there eating a steak, you know, he would come by and go, "Who are you eating?" You know, and we said, "I don't know, but I hope she looks good." But he was a character, but his thing was, in fact, Bruno used to always call him like some guys were wrestlers and would do things. Killer was unpredictable. He was constant motion. And he was proud of the fact that he could wrestle for an hour and run around and never blow up. His thing was never blowing up.
Right.
And he was a big guy, 6'8", you know, and when he used to eat meat, he was like 280, 290, then became a vegetarian, trimmed down a little bit. But his thing, but you never knew what you were getting from him. He might kick you, he might scratch you, he might eye gouge you, he might bite you, he might punch you. But he'd always constantly be going, and he was like proud of that because he could do that for hours.
Right.
So when you got in the ring with Killer Kowalski, you never knew what to expect. You could just kind of have to go with the flow and then just good luck.
And did you ever have to test any fans out in those days when the promoters would, you know, when a wrestler wanted to
get into
Hulk Hogan? Did you ever have to deal with any of those fans that wanted to become wrestlers?
You know what? Yeah, I did one time. I held up the code of the old school, and then I felt bad about it. But there was a guy, because in the old days, you know, when they would promote towns and guys would come in and pester the promoters and want to be wrestlers, they would finally, if they were a pain in the ass, they would say, okay, go in with that guy, a little old guy. His name's Carl Gott. You go wrestle him, and if you can beat him, you know, we'll book you a match. And they know damn well Carl's going to break the guy's arm. Yeah. So the guy, the fans all excited, gets in the ring, he broke his arm. And then he'd go back to the neighborhood going, God, that is real, man. I went in to try it, he broke my arm. So it was good business to do that back in the old days. Plus they didn't want anybody around. So one time in San Diego, Leo Garibaldi was the booker. Some guy was bugging the hell out of him. And Gene LaBelle was a big judo guy and stuff. And one of his students was there, but Gene wasn't there. But I got the word from Gene and through Leo that there's this asshole, just get in the ring with him and put him out of commission. So I said, okay. So for the old school code, you know, and all that, I get in the ring and I look across the ring and here's this guy, he's 6'6", 300 pounds, and he looks good. I'm going, Jesus Christ, this guy, you know, and he, you know, so he's ready to go because, you know, he's wrestling for real. So, oh God. So as soon as I rang the bell, I had to hurt the guy, and I just wanted to get it quick. And the quickest thing I could do with him, because of the way he came at me, and didn't know anything about the old shooter stuff, I leg dove him in a way where I put my hand behind his heel and then drove my shoulder right below his knee. So that hyperextends your knee and pops your knee out. It only takes 15 pounds of pressure. So when he came at me, boom! I went down and popped out his knee. I heard it pop, and he fell backwards like a big tree. And he's laying in the ring with his knee going, oh God, I heard it pop. And then I popped up and went, yeah, God, I'm sorry about that. You know, and then, and all that. And then, you know, he limped home thanking the promoters for giving him a chance to break his knee. And then I got back in Leo and I got messages from Gene, good job, that was a great move, you know. And so I felt, but then after a while I thought about it, the poor bastard, I didn't have to break his leg, you know. But I didn't want him to hurt me either.
So now it's the complete opposite. Now you have the guy's headgear to wear if they're having a tryout or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what they do now, but you know, everything, the world changed. Back then, men were men. Nowadays, you sneeze on somebody, they sue you.
Right.
So, you know.
And can you give us the long version of how you came up with the whole angle with Bruno and how you executed it to? Well,
in a nutshell, I came up with the idea because I knew, I could feel with what was going on and how the territory was, you know, going downhill money-wise.
Is it true it was almost bankrupt at one point?
Well, it was on the verge of bankruptcies because it wasn't their only business. You know, there was Vince Sr., there was Phil Zacco, there was Willie Gilzenberg, and not just with the wrestling. They were boxing fans and would, you know, give money to promote boxers. They had their private booths at the racetrack. I mean, they lived a great life. But it was kind of that month-to-month life, you know, and they made money like off the Garden. But if the Garden didn't draw money, because the Garden was expensive, the Garden took like 70% of everything.
Right, it still is.
Yeah, you know, it's prestige, but they take a lot. So if the Garden didn't make money, you know, Vince Sr. didn't make money, so. But, yeah, so back in those days, I just knew that if Bruno would do it, it was money, yeah.
And how did you convince him?
Well, I talked to him on the phone a bunch and just kept telling him that, you know, I know anybody gets you in the ring. I mean, it would be the biggest break. And back then, you know, I was Bruno's protege for some years. So in terms of the fans and the promoters, that's what I was kind of labeled. It wasn't like, Larry Zbyszko. It was like, oh, Bruno's kid, you're Bruno's protege. It's got some guys didn't even know my name. Oh, you're Bruno's protege. So it was a way for me to kind of get out of that shadow because he was so huge. And Bruno said, okay, well, okay, for you, I'll do it. But now this is how I learned even more, is Bruno was the one that had week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, so the people would...
Okay, so he came up with the actual booking.
Yeah, he was the expert at that. He was the one that did it for 18 years, and that's why he was over for 18 years.
Okay, so he had to play all the time in the booking of his angles?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, when it came to him, he did his own. And, you know.
So he came up with the technical wrestling match, and then when he was trying to interview you, you walking away.
Well, I came up with a couple of things, but in terms of the technical match, and then some other stuff in the Garden, and you know, that was all Bruno stuff. And at first the McMahons didn't want to go for it because they didn't know they were going to put up all this money for the Gardens and the stadiums, and it's Larry Zbyszko. If I didn't draw, they're busted. Right. You know, but then after a while, you know, after it happened, after the first week set in, because I went to some places and it was sold out and people went nuts, and McMahon's knew, oh, this worked. In fact, it was so hot for those days, it was the talk of the business because it was just ridiculous.
And who came up with the idea to have the blow-off in Shea Stadium?
Well, it just kind of worked out that way because it was so big. There was so much demand for tickets. The Garden wasn't big enough. Right. You know, the Garden, even with the Felt Forum open, maybe held 22,000 or something, which they always
3 sellouts in the Garden or something
yeah,
like that, right?
which was kind of unheard of for a run in those days. But that was at raised ticket prices. But so they just had an opportunity to do the stadium thing, and then there might have been something with the date too at the Garden. So Vince finds out, hey, hell, we'll take a chance. It's it's over. And it worked. I mean, the fire chief wouldn't let any more people come in, and the baseball park wouldn't let us put chairs on the ground. So we had to turn away thousands of people, with 45,000 people in the place.
Did they ever have any consideration at that time when you were so hot to actually make you the WWE champion?
Well, I think there was some talk about it, and to be honest with you, me and Vince Sr. had like a kind of like a little beef over it, because I thought I should, because I was the one drawing and the one that people were into and the one that people hated, and Bob didn't care about.
Been champion for a while by that time.
And even Vince Sr. said to me, well, I know Bob, isn't wrong, but he just liked him, and so we just left it that way.
What do you think about Bob personally?
Oh, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's a great athlete, but it's just a matter of, in this business, it's the look. I mean, there's something about, people expect. I mean, if you're at the airport and you go, there's the heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, you'll push some of these wrestlers out of the way today. I mean, CM Punk, you're going to push him out of the way. Get out of the way, kid. I'm looking for the heavyweight champion of the world. Because you expect to see a guy that looks like Brock Lesnar.
Right. And since you mentioned CM Punk, I'll just bring it up. How do you think it makes the wrestling business when there's like a 3-time world champion get demolished?
Gets knocked out in the thing?
Yeah.
With the Punk thing, that was during the years I didn't watch, so I just kind of heard his name at the very end when I got in, and I really don't know that much about the guy. But then him getting knocked out, I mean, it didn't surprise me,
Do you think he should go back to wrestling or continue?
I think he should just stay away.
His career is pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, he had his run, he did his thing, people saw him, okay, they're ready for something new. Right. The fans are ready for something new. I mean, if you look at the guys that are coming in, you got some guys that look great, great guys and doing good, but they've been there 15 years, 18 years, and the people are, trying in a way to, I think the people are trying to make their voices heard. Like when John Cena comes in, Cena sucks, Cena sucks. And everybody really likes John because he's a great guy. And he does great things and he looks great. But it's kind of saying, we love John Cena, but he's been here for almost 20 years and we want someone new. But they don't have anybody new. So, which is good because they're going to have guys new, so it gives a lot of opportunity for a new generation of guys coming in.
No one's sticking though right now. That's the problem, I guess.
Well, yeah, but I think pretty soon, after Mania, by the summer, they're going to have a new guy that's going to freak people out.
Is there any particular reason why they never gave you a heel manager when you turned heel? Because usually the guy that fought Bruno always had a manager.
Yeah, the managers. I mean, manager-wise, I was never into the manager thing because I did great promos. I was one of the guys that was gifted with gab. I mean, I could talk on the broadcasting, on the interviews, and I had a way of doing it to where one of the things I stole from the old school, one of the secrets of becoming a star and getting people involved in your characters was they have to believe in you. And wrestling got to a point where it gets hard to believe in. But when it came to Larry Zbyszko in the late 80s and the mid 80s and late 80s and early 80s, throughout the whole 80s, the people believed I was an asshole. They believed I was an asshole in real life. So when I came out, forget wrestling, this guy's an asshole, I can't stand him. And I had them. They were easy to, pop. So I didn't need a manager.
And were you ever attacked on your everyday life outside of the ring, just going straight to the gym?
You know what? I never have. And I always kept it low pro. We always kind of traveled when everybody was at work or we're at an airport and being gone. But I was one of the guys that never drank. A lot of the guys, after the show, boom, they go to the bar and bing. Once a Samoan start drinking, you better get the hell out of there. But I tried drinking when I was young, but I have a couple and I'd puke and it was horrible tasting crap. So I never drank. So I never went to the clubs because it was full of drunks that I couldn't, they're idiots anyway. So I never really put myself in places that stuff would happen. And when I walk around the street, I got sunglasses on, I got my hat,
right.
You know, I keep my low profile. But I still get recognized a lot. So.
Did you have much dealings with Vince Jr. during that first WWE run?
Now, you know what? I never really dealt with Vince Jr. that much because when I was there, his dad was running it. And Vince was kind of starting and doing the broadcasting. And I was really dealing with Bruno and his dad. And Vince at that stage was, you know, kind of new. And Vince wanted to get in the ring, but his dad didn't want him to right then. And Vince did a good job on the mic, you know, but he learned the business and he caught on good from all of those school guys because when the era was changing and television was now changing into nationwide cables, Vince was the new young promoter on the block that saw it coming. The other promoters were still the old school guys like Vern Gagne and the Crockett's and Fred, and they didn't see the new era coming. You know, Vince saw it coming. And
I understand you had a phone conversation with Vince in those days where you actually started crying.
Well, you got to remember, promoters, and Bruno would drill in my head out. The promoters will try to get you to do anything and do everything and pay you the little as possible because there was no contracts.
Right.
So there was times when you had to really stick up for yourself. And now I'm a kid, and then we had, you know, a couple of little arguments over paydays because I was the one getting shot at and drawing the house. The Backlund was getting a bigger paycheck.
Yeah, so he had a $6,000 guarantee.
They had some guarantee, yeah, if you were the champ at the car. So I told Vince, I said, hey, I don't care what you pay Bob, but I want more than him because I'm the one drawing. You know, it's just fair. So in those days, there was no cell phones and nobody to get a hold of people. So Vince Sr. would he hung up on me once. And then the story was he's en route from his Miami home back to New York and no one can reach him. So then Bruno told me, well, just don't show up for the house shows and they'll freak out. So I don't show up for a few main events at the small clubs. They freak out. So Vince Jr. calls me. And he's on me, and his approach was different. He's going, come on, you want to give my dad a heart attack, Larry? You know, and I almost confessed because I felt so bad for the guy. But I was a kid. I was like 25, 26. I'm doing what Bruno told me to do because,
right.
You know, and Vince, you know, Vince is an emotional guy. You know, so I mean, you know, he'd be yelling, and then he'd be going, oh, come on, man. You know, I mean, he had me on the ropes. But I didn't cave, so...
And you ended up getting 5% of that Shea Stadium gate, I guess?
Yeah, I think I was 5%, and Bruno got like 5.5%, a little bit more than me. Or maybe 6%, 1% more. There was some deal going on. But I learned a lot. I basically did what Bruno said, because I didn't know that stuff. That was old school, top guy. If you weren't a top guy, you couldn't do that.
Right.
If you were someone that went up to Vince and said, hey, I think I better get this money out the door, you'd be. So it was stuff that really no one knew except a couple. You had to be a top guy to pull it off, and I didn't know this. But that's how I learned. I learned the hard way.
Do you think that's why, despite how much heat you had, they kind of got rid of you very shortly after that Bruno match?
Well, yeah, there was probably kind of, you know, some, but they didn't try to get rid of me right away, but there were some games being played.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting because they would say like, you know, hey, I think you should wrestle Pedro Morales 3 times in Boston. So right away you say to yourself, oh God, well for the next 3 or 4 months, I'm gonna make a bunch of money because I'm gonna be the main event here for 3 months and the main event. And then when you get to there, you know,
because in those days the main event made more than
the money.
Match.
Oh yeah, that's where the money.
You got a percentage of the card according to where you were.
And then what deal you had with them, you know. But then when I got there, things would change, and they would expect, you know, like Pedro maybe to win, and I would only do a 1-shot instead of the other 2, and I'd say I can't do that. That wasn't the deal. So you had to stand up for yourself too.
Right.
So after a few of those, it got to the point where, and Bruno actually told me to do this because Bruno never beat me.
Right.
He walked out of the cage so I wouldn't get killed, but he never beat me in any shows.
Right.
And he did that on purpose so I had an excuse to use and say, hey, Bruno never beat me, so can't make Bruno look bad.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Skolin and Fanini and Monsoon would go, yeah, well, that's right. You know, no. So I used that. But then it was time, really, because I had so much publicity, if I would have stayed there, they would have tried to use all the heat up. And, you know, probably, I'm sure maybe Vince would have liked to punch me in the face back then. But now we love each other with the respect, because I think he's great, and, you know, we get along great. So it worked out good. It's a good ending to a hell of a story. But back then, I also had the advantage of having all the heat and the publicity. So the AWA wanted me, the NWA wanted me. And then the way it worked out, it wasn't like a heat thing of never going back. It was that new era beginning when Vince saw it coming, and because I was just there, he took the guys from everybody's territory that was over. He took Hulk and Heenan and Jesse and Mean Gene from Vern, and the Junkyard Dog, and somebody from Watts, and Hacksaw and Steamboat and Piper, and somebody Flair from the NWA. So he had everybody's territory's top guy. So when the nationwide TV launched, Vince was ready for it. He could go into your territory, and you knew who his star was. But that left the other territories, because in those days they went, that son of a gun, oh, that was breaking the code of all these old promoters. But the times were changing. But for me, that left the AWA, the NWA, the two good territories with money, in a jam, and they needed top talent because theirs just went to Vince. So that gave me a good opportunity, and I was always getting calls from the AWA with a good deal, and then the NWA with a good deal, and then back to the AWA with a good deal. So I always had a good deal going, you know, with these guys, because all their guys went there.
Right.
And it was just a matter, and then when I got kind of too old to wrestle at 40, I could have kept going, but the broadcasting thing worked out that I didn't plan on. And then I got a 10-year run in WCW doing that. So it worked out great.
And you also went to Japan, I understand.
Oh, yeah.
I got to ask you to
times.
Tell that story about Mr. Fuji and Haystacks Calhoun.
Oh, well, the guys, I mean, it was such a life where 95% of the wrestling profession was traveling. And after years, it gets boring. So you had some characters and that would pull the classic, the rib. The rib was a thing within the business. Some guys were ribbers, some guys weren't ribbers. I would never rib anybody because I did not want the revenge rib. And I was lucky because I had that reputation of being a hooker, so no one really ribbed me. But guys like Fuji and some other guys, they loved to rib you just to break the monotony of boredom. And I mean, they would do things like if someone fell asleep in the dressing room on a table, they'd put 4 or 5 strips of that white tape on your boot and light it on fire. So all of a sudden you'd wake up and this big flame, you'd have a giant hot foot, and you'd start jumping around, putting it on. Fuji'd laugh his ass off. But you were afraid to do a revenge rib to Fuji because he would do a more ridiculous rib back.
Yeah.
So I never got involved in the rib games. But one time he gets his hands on this thing that for some reason cracked him up. The stuff that makes you go to the bathroom.
Laxatives.
Yeah, laxatives. And Haystacks Calhoun, who can barely get on the plane to begin with through the door, because he's 610 pounds. I mean, his butt is this wide. He's on there, and Fuji's X-laxing something into his coffee and stuff. And so halfway to the flight, and you got like a 13-hour flight, you know, to Tokyo. So we're in the middle of the ocean, on our way to Tokyo, and Calhoun is dying. He is dying. You can hear him like he's squirting out farts. He's dying. He's got the cramps. He can't hold it. Finally, he tried, but he can't. You know, the lavatories on an airplane, you slide the little things open. It's this wide.
Yeah.
Haystacks couldn't get 1/2 of his ass in there, let alone his ass. So in the back of the plane, behind the curtain, these poor Japanese students, there's 2 of them, and they're holding a big garbage bag under his ass, and you can hear it squirting. And so some moans because the smell coming out, and some people were gagging. Some of the Japanese people were laughing their asses off. Thank God in those days you could smoke, and all the Japanese smokes. At least the plane was full of smoke and killed some of the stench. But it was, and Fuji was dying. I mean, unbelievable. You had to be there to really appreciate the scope of that. But it was a classic.
Who were your main feuds with in Japan?
Well, I never really had a feud because you weren't there that long enough to really build up a feud. You know, 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you want to blow your brains out. So then I cut back 4 weeks, 3 weeks. But I worked a lot with their top guys. I worked with a lot of great matches with Jumbo Tsuruta back in those days. Some guys I can't even remember their name. You know, Baba, some other guys. And then I had a classic run with Saito when the AWA. And in fact, me and Saito sold out the Tokyo Dome with 72,000 people in like 1990.
Were you around in the AWA when Saito had that issue with Patera?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, Ken was one of these guys who was a great guy. You love Ken. But then Ken would drink. And then there was a point where Ken would become the complete opposite of a nice, loving, great guy he was. He became obnoxious. Just stayed away from him. Well, one day he goes to a McDonald's and they just slide the window shut and they just close down. He pulls up to the drive-thru or something and he's starving. And he wants to get some burgers and they go, sorry, we're closed. And as he's looking through the window, he sees some guy walking by with a tray of burgers that had been sitting there for 10, 20 minutes, whatever. And he goes, well, wait a minute, the guy's got a bunch of burgers. I'll just buy those. And the guy in the McDonald's said, I'm sorry, but it's just the rules. Those have been sitting there for 20 minutes and we're closed. We have to throw those away. And Ken said, don't throw them away. I'll pay you for them. Give me the damn burgers. So he's getting pissed off because they have to throw the burgers away. And so instead of just driving away, he gets out of the car, picks up a rock, and throws it through the McDonald's window. At the same time, he's going, no one screws over Ken Patera. And if you want to do anything about it, I'm at the Holiday Inn, assholes. So he's telling them, you know, so he gets back in the car and drives back to the Holiday Inn or wherever the hell he was staying. And he's sharing a room with Saito. So sure enough, the police show up. There's one police woman, I guess, I didn't see this part, a couple of police guys. They show up shortly at Ken Patera's room because he yelled out who the hell he was at the Holiday Inn and knock on the door. Ken goes, stupid police, I'm not talking to him, and goes into the bedroom. So poor Saito opens the door. He has no idea what's going on, right? He has no clue, and the police are trying to say stuff to him, and he's going, English, or Scotia, and something, and then something happened where either one of the policewomen or something tried to push him out of the way or move him. They said, or they knew Ken was in there, and they pushed him, but then Saito automatically kind of arm dragged her out of the way, and the other cop jumped him, and he threw that cop down, and he, all of a sudden, boom, he's beating up 3 cops. They're trying to make some of these block, and and Saito was the tough bastard. So he's basically almost knocked out some policewoman, right, and the other 2 guys, and finally Ken comes out. So poor Saito,
he just woke up.
Wound up going to jail because he opened the door and didn't know what the hell was going on.
And he was in jail for something like 2 years.
Yeah, something like that. I visited him a couple times.
After your match with Saito, you attended the Tyson.
The fight.
The fight, and why were you suspicious that it was rigged?
Well, here's what happened. And it all made sense at the end because, boxing again, even football with the betting, it's big business. It's kind of weird how they set the point spread where we were 7.5 points, and mysteriously that half point gets all the money line. It's weird, and so I never really got into anything because I know how things work. But we had an offer from the promoter because we had the big Tokyo Dome show, and the next night was the Buster Douglas Tyson fight. So the promoter said, hey, if anybody wants to go, you got free tickets, we'll take you to the fight. Right after the fight, we went to Narita Airport, and we were all flying out, to go back home. Tour was over. So I said, yeah, I'll go. And Leon Big Vader was a big fan, and I can't remember, there was 4 or 5 other guys that went. And we're sitting like 3 or 4 rows back from ringside, right? But right in front of us is Don King with the hairdo. Trump might have been sitting there, if I remember right.
Yeah, because he was working with Tyson.
Okay, well, yeah, Trump might have been right. I mean, but we're right there. They're 3 rows away. And the fight's right there. We're watching it. And Leon was a big fan. Big fan. I couldn't really care that much about it. I liked Ali, but then that time. So Leon, about, I don't know what round, whatever rounds it was, couldn't take it anymore. And he gets up, and I mean, he's huge. And they got some little guard that's Japanese, that's about 4 foot tall, stand there. But we're so close to the ring that Leon got up out of his chair and took a few steps, and he was right by the apron in the corner of the ring. And he went to take a picture. He just wanted to get a close-up picture, and then he was going to run back to his seat. He gets there to click, and boom, down goes Tyson, and then he gets knocked out. Well, Leon walks back, and he's white as a ghost. He's holding his camera, and his eyes are like this, and he's like a zombie. And he goes, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I said, what? He says, I went to take a picture, and I heard Tyson go, now, now. And then Buster hit him, and he fell down. I don't believe it. And then, just as a backup thing, in case that don't make sense, right after that, this is out of the country, this is in Japan, not America. Right after that, Tyson winds up going to jail for whatever.
Yeah, so you may have already known about that he was going to jail.
So yeah, so they did not want the heavyweight champion of the world going to jail. So outside of all the state athletic commissions in the U.S., overseas, Buster Douglas wins. Anyway, you get the drift.
Okay, so after WWF, you went to NWA, I guess. What led to going into there, other than you losing your job with WWE and moving on, I guess? Well,
yeah, I kind of did a run out. It was kind of a half, that they were trying to use me up, and I ran out with the pub.
Yeah.
But the NWA was one of the premier territories too before they went away. And they called me and made me an offer and wanted me to, come down and work, because I had all the publicity. I was a new hot heel. And I know they wanted me to work with Magnum, but then he got in a wreck. But they needed, new guys. So then I got a call, and I wound up going down there. And then I went to the AWA for a while, then back to the NWA, because they had an idea about me wrestling Dusty when Baby Doll had dirty pictures of him.
Right.
But, so they get all this, stuff lined up. Baby Doll's got an envelope with pictures of Dusty, supposedly nasty ones that we're going to blackmail Dusty with. And we just started this, this angle. And one of the things the Crockett's wanted Baby Doll to do when Dusty was doing an interview, because Dusty didn't know it was going to happen, they wanted Baby Doll to run out and grab Dusty and give him a big kiss on the lips and let him go, and that would have been giving Dusty the kiss of death when it came out. But Baby Doll had just married Sam Houston, and Sam Houston was freaking out with jealousy if Baby Doll ran over and kissed somebody. So during Dusty's promo, Baby Doll chickened out and didn't run out and give Dusty the kiss of death because of her new husband, Sam Houston, freaking out. So the Crockett's fired her. So that took care of, and people say about the thing with me and Baby Doll and the dirty picture, so they fired Baby Doll. So now there a little bit, but then I want to go back to the
think of Baby Doll, because we talked to Tully Blanchard, and he was talking about she was tougher than most men.
Well, she might have been. I mean, I didn't know her a long time. I mean, she was very nice, and we were on the road together a little bit. I was married to Kathy, Vern's daughter, and she was married to Sam, but me and Baby Doll would travel together a bunch back in them days. But it was a short reign. It didn't. I knew her for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then she got fired.
And you bring up working with Dusty a bit. What did you think of him as a booker? He booked in so many territories over the years. Well,
Dusty was a very witty guy. He was a sharp guy, witty guy, good for a booker. But he had a bad habit, too. Because sometimes it was hard for Dusty to keep himself out of some things. And sometimes Dusty did things he shouldn't have done, probably to keep himself over more. I remember if the Road Warriors came into the Carolinas and got over, the next thing you knew, Dusty was painted up like a Road Warrior, and he was a Road Warrior. I remember in the New World Order, when I had that programmed and going hot, Dusty wanted to switch and be a New World Order guy. So sometimes Dusty, made sure Dusty was taken care of too much at the expense of some things. But overall, he was a sharp guy, and he respected my work a lot, so I always got along good with him. But I could see sometimes in terms of business where, come on, Dust, it's time,
Yeah, we talked to Ronnie Garvin, and he had a couple problems with Dusty.
Well, yeah, because Dusty was a good guy, but then there was times when Dusty shouldn't have been there, but he was, and then that diluted the new talent.
I guess he must have also been a pretty good politician to stay in all the offices all the time.
I mean, the guys that managed to stay, Dusty, Kevin Sullivan was like that. Terry Taylor was a good, always wound up in an office. But, again, he was a smart guy. Dusty, very smart, witty guy, and managed to keep himself. He was always in some office, even WCW.
What do you remember about your feud with Paul Orndorff in NWA?
Very short, because that was a long time ago. And I remember I was there, Killer Brooks and Orndorff, and then we had something where, for the first time, and some of the things I wound up doing were first-time things. I got some good talk in those days, because Orndorff had the National Heavyweight Championship in Atlanta, and it was kind of obvious if I wrestled Orndorff, so we did something where I helped Killer Brooks cheat, and Killer Brooks had the belt, but he was like a big dumb sidekick nasty guy. And I was the asshole. So I bought the belt, and then I paraded around like the national heavyweight, but everybody hated me because you bought the belt, you asshole. When no one's ever done that before. So it was kind of a cool thing at the time. And then I worked with Paul a little bit, but then I think Paul went up to WWF shortly.
Yeah, I guess you also must have known him in WCW, and we recently did an interview with Vader, and Vader told us about the little altercation that they had there. Were you around at all?
What altercation? Oh, him and Orndorff?
Were you around for that?
Oh, a couple, yeah, no, I wasn't around. I think that was at center stage.
Yeah.
Him and Orndorff got in a fight or something?
Yeah, Vader was giving us a different version than the one Paul had, so I was just...
Oh, okay, so, you know what? I wasn't there. The story I remember is Orndorff basically slapped the crap out of him. And that's happened to a few guys in the back that you wouldn't think. I mean, one time Jericho front face locked Goldberg, and was choking Goldberg out, and he said, well, if I let you go, are you going to stop? And Goldberg went, no, okay, so he didn't let him go. But, some of these guys don't realize that if you don't wrestle, you're going to get in trouble.
What was your heat with Jericho over? At one point, apparently you had...
Oh, well, I really didn't have heat with Jericho. I mean, it's a good kid, good guy. And, but it was just at a time when WCW just ended, all of a sudden Jericho was calling himself the living legend. And at that same time, I got a call from Jim Ross. The WWE was interested in me coming in doing the broadcasting on SmackDown. And I said, well, yeah, cool, I'd love to do the broadcasting on SmackDown. And then in the mail, I got a letter from these lawyers that said something about, hey, we're taking the name The Living Legend. We thank you in advance. Sign it away here. But no check came out. But I looked at it as a chance to work a big angle because I'm always thinking business. And back then when WCW just ended and the WWE was there and some of the guys were back and forth, and I was such a big WCW guy standing up against the New World Order and that, and if I did SmackDown, with Jericho calling himself the living legend, that could have led to a good novelty match between me and Jericho. And the fact that I was never there, and in those days, Vince was buffed. Remember back when Vince was, he was buffed. So I was thinking, should me and Vince against each other, we would have had the biggest buy rate of the time. So I went to shoot an angle. I went, again, back from the old days, what the deal is, you don't take crap.
Yeah.
And the promoters don't like it at first, but they'll respect you for it because they don't take crap either. And I respect them for that because you got to keep it business. So it basically just kind of wound up a headbutt where I filed this suit just so Jericho couldn't call himself the living legend. But it was basically like nothing it was like a double knockout, and then they wanted me back with them.
And you brought up his backstage fight with Goldberg. Did you actually witness that?
No, I didn't see that, but it's a funny story.
Considering Goldberg's supposed to be this.
Yeah, considering that. But the way Jericho did it was a classic, because it was like, okay, if I let you go, are you going to keep coming? Yeah, well, then I'm not letting you go. Dummy.
You're very well known for your time in the AWA. How did you end up coming there the first time?
Well, the first time was that rotation system. I was in the WWF with all the pub and the big break. Then the territories went nationwide. And there was a different competition, but the NWA and the AWA needed new guys. So I was in the NWA a little bit. They were on the beginning of TBS. But the AWA, and this is kind of an interesting story, was also on nationwide cable at the beginning on ESPN, the sports network. So after being in the NWA a little bit, again, if I would have stayed there, I would have become old news. If I would go up to the AWA, I would have been the big new thing. Plus, they were also on nationwide cable, and I wanted to make sure I was on nationwide cable. And ESPN was funny, because when they first came on, they wanted wrestling big time, because wrestling got them ratings that let them survive and become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when they got big enough, then all of a sudden, they didn't want wrestling anymore. Wrestling, well, it's not a sport, we don't want wrestling.
Right.
So they used it to get going. But for me in the days, it worked out good, because ESPN was showing it like twice a day, the AWA. So it was a good place to go, because I was just done with this group, and now I was the fresh guy in the AWA.
Did you have any contact with Mad Dog Vachon while you were there?
Not much. I met him a few times. He was already kind of over the hill when I was going, and he was insane. He was insane. I've heard a couple stories, and thank God I wasn't around.
Opening the door.
Opening the airplane door.
How dangerous is that? Because I know you're a pilot.
I'm a pilot. Well, yeah. Well, it could have been death for all those guys. They're lucky that the Beechcraft, the way the door opened, that it didn't do any damage to the tail or the wing or the fly. I mean, they're really lucky the way that, but it was insanity. I mean, the pilots were damn lucky to,
And what about?
And the funny part is, Mad Dog's insane, but he's like a 3-year-old. So now they make an emergency landing, right? And they shut the door and check it, and all the boys are lined up there, and the boys want to kill Mad Dog. They want to kill him. But they know he's crazy, so they're not messing with him. Now the pilot comes over, and the pilot says, hey guys, I got to ask you something. If the door opened by itself, we're going to have to stay here all night until we get an FAA guy out to check it and clear it. But if one of you guys accidentally opened the door, then we can take off and fly back home. And Mad Dog, who's crazy, would pull your eyeball out, would open a door with, 14,000 feet, and nuts. He stands up like a little kid and takes a couple steps, and he goes, I'm sorry, I did it. It was like, Jesus Christ. So the pilot said, okay, we can fly home. But it was ridiculous. Insanity.
Because he had that habit of ripping people's eyes out in bar fights.
Well, I heard some, yeah, I mean, he just rip your eye out. He'd poke your eye out, throw it down, and step on it. I mean, crazy.
Supposedly Ming had some stories like that.
Well, Ming was a legitimately tough 300-pound guy that knew what he was doing. I mean, someone, could get in trouble. He'd just reach out and goozle you, squeeze you enough, and out you'd go. And then he'd keep drinking and ignore you. But you didn't mess with Ming.
I guess because you weren't a drinker, you never got to see him in action.
Yeah, because I stayed away from the insanity part. I was a suburbanite kid raised on the golf course that didn't want to deal with reality, so I joined the circus.
Yeah.
But I wasn't insane like most of the guys. I watched the show from within the show, and I was trained by Bruno, who was strictly business. I was there as a businessman. I wasn't there as a bull. I wasn't there to drink and party with rats. I wasn't there to, be a celebrity. I was there to make the most money I could as a businessman. That's what was in my brain.
Our fans always like to hear the Ming stories. Do you know of any that...
You know, I didn't hang around him. I really haven't heard any, but I just know you did not mess with Ming. Or any other drunk Samoan. I met Afa the first time up in Vancouver when he was young and starting. And they were up a couple of weeks, and Afa said, "Oh, I have to fly to San Francisco, brother." I said, "Why? What happened?" "Oh, I have to go to court because I punched a guy." I said, "You gotta go all the way back there to court because you punched a guy when he ran in the ring?" And Afa said, "Well, he died." And Afa punched a guy one time, killed him. Guy ran in the ring, you know, boom, he ran in the ring, he get killed.
And what were your first impressions of Vern Gagne when you first met him?
Well, I was impressed. I mean, I knew all about him from the stories. But the first time I met him, it was a good rapport. Vern was a good guy. He was a smart promoter, so he knew talent. And I was over. I had a name, so he knew that. And it worked out real good.
And what are your memories of your feud with Sergeant Slaughter?
Well, it was short and sweet, but when I had the belt, as a bad guy who everybody hated, in those days, there was guys that had good pub from the WWE that were done with them now, because they needed new guys. And I, as a bad guy, you know, we could bring in Sergeant Slaughter that everybody knew, and had some great matches with the Sarge. In fact, one match in Chicago, I came back to the dressing room and Bockwinkel went, "That's a 10, my boy," you know, and it was rare to hear from Nick. But me and Sarge had some good ones, and then we bring Harley Race in. I worked with Harley, I worked with Saito, you know, in Japan, and that, and then I'd work with, God knows who else. Some bad brain cells.
You had a Wrestle Rock Rumble match with Scott Ledoux.
Oh, Scott Ledoux.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that angle and the famous song?
Well, the song, I mean, I was always an old schooler at heart. So doing the song to me was kind of on the borderline. You gotta be ribbon. This is stupid. So I said, okay, I'll go along with it. This is changing a little bit with this stuff. So I did this stupid song. But the thing about wrestling, and one of the things that draws the most are the novelties. Because people automatically know this is a one-time deal. You know, that was part of it when Bruno came out of retirement. It wasn't going to go on forever. And me and Bischoff in the New World Order, it was the biggest buy rate they ever did, the two I was on, because they knew it was a novelty thing. It was a one-shot deal. Me and Hall were a one-shot deal, so they had to see it. And you know, me and Vince were in a novelty. It would have been bigger than ever. So, what were we just talking about?
Your match against the boxer Scott Ledoux.
Okay, Ledoux.
Faced,
so that was the wrestler versus the boxer. So that was something that was a novelty idea, like other things are, and they always draw. But Ledoux was pretty good. I mean, he was over in Minnesota because he fought Ali, and people knew him, and all that. And again, I had so much heat. I mean, people believe I was an asshole. And in fact, I saw it not too long ago, the replay. And if you want to, it kind of looks like a modern day MMA fight kind of thing, where the wrestler would take him down and the boxer would hit me. And it was done good. I mean, Scott did a great job. And I think overall it worked out really good. He finally got a shot in that almost knocked me out. My hair exploded. But then I was saved by the bell, and the place went nuts. And I mean, it was good. And Scott did a good job. But it was a good novelty thing. It was
Is it true the Nasty Boys were ribbing him pretty hard at that time?
You know what, they may have, but I didn't hang around the boys.
So you didn't know all the
Yeah, I mean, those guys, that generation, the Midnight Rockers, the Nasty Boys, they were all out partying and going nuts, and I stayed away from them.
And what were your thoughts on Ray Stevens, who was in AWA, still around?
Well, Ray was a classic. And Ray was one of these guys that was good to have around. He would be like a modern day agent. You know, he did a little wrestling. He was getting a little too old for the wrestling. But, you know, being there with Nick Bockwinkel a little bit, he was in the office, and he helped out with a lot of things. I remember one time I set something up with Kurt Hennig and Bockwinkel, and I slipped Kurt the roll of dimes that nobody saw, and Ray Stevens, come on, that was a Ray Stevens idea, that thing that people talked about for a long time. So he was good to have around. He was a good guy.
And your matches with Nick Bockwinkel?
Well, they were smooth. I mean, they were a night off. I mean, that was wrestling, holds. Bockwinkel was an old pro, and I was great. So it was like, It was easy. The part about Bockwinkel was it got to the point where Vern needed to bring some new guys in. Finally, he did, like Slaughter and some other. But it was getting to the point where Nick's been there a long time, and me and Nick were having maybe too many matches, you know. But Nick was great.
You mentioned Curt Hennig. Do you have any stories about knowing him?
Well, I mean, Curt was a good guy. He was kind of a ribber. The one thing that flattered me about Curt was he stole one of my moves. And there was one thing I did where I would be getting up from the apron and have my hand on the top rope, and a guy would kick me in the leg, and I'd fly out, land on my back, and try to get up on the other rope, and the guy kicked me in the leg, and I'd go up in the air, and boom, and try to get up all the way around the ring a few times. And then I'm watching Curt one time, and all of a sudden, he's doing it. But instead of him going out and landing on his back like I did, when you kick Curt did a whole somersault. And I told him, don't do that, you're gonna break your neck. Because he said, I stole your move. And I said, yeah, that's cool, great. That was like a compliment. But I said, but don't flip around, you're gonna break your neck, you know, one of these times. It's, yeah. Sure enough, he hurt his neck doing it one time.
Yeah, because he ended up...
And then this kid was doing it a little bit, and I asked one of the guys, I said, well, what about this thing I did? And they said, no, the WWE won't let us do that. They think it's too violent. Okay.
And you already told me this off camera, but how did the whole ninja gimmick start?
The ninja thing. I mean, I was in the AWA, and I used to carry the nunchucks in the bag because people tried to kill me a lot. And security started at the airport. Before that, I just had a gun in my bag.
Right.
So I kept the nunchucks in.
Because you used to be a martial artist back.
Yeah, well, I took it back in high school. I started because we had to do wrestling season. And then in the summer between wrestling seasons, I did the martial arts for balance and other moves, you know, to add with the wrestling.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, I wanted to be ready, for this. I mean, to me, it was real. So I was, martial arts, wrestling, hooking, all that. And so I had the nunchucks in the bag, but they were heavy wooden nunchucks. And I used them for warming up. So I was in the shower room one day when no one was in it yet because the show didn't start, and I'm spinning the nunchucks around and loosening up the shoulders, and Vern Gagne walks by, and all of a sudden I hear, "Holy shit, what in the hell are those?" And I went, "Oh, these are nunchucks. It's like a martial arts weapon." And he goes, "Now that's the kind of new stuff I'm talking about." And I didn't even know he was talking about new stuff. So the next thing I know, he flies Mr. Go, some guy from Japan, over, and he goes, "Hey, I got you a ninja, why don't you get a karate?" So I pulled one of my little karate outfits out of the closet, and it was welcome. The next thing I knew, I got a ninja. He flew out, and this was part of the Bockwinkel feud. It was probably going on too long by then, but Vern wanted to enhance it, so I had a ninja with the nunchucks. And Bockwinkel at that time, Indiana Jones just came out and was huge. So Vern had Nick come out with a hat, and Nick had the whip. So I had the nunchucks, and Nick had the whip trying to counter him like he was Indiana Jones. So, but that's how that kind of happened, just warming up in the shower and Vern having some brainstorm.
And wasn't Sherry Martel involved in that at some point?
Sherry Martel was there. But I don't know if she was ever involved with me in the ring.
Okay, she just dated one of your ninjas or something like that.
Well, she was in love with me for a while, and it was nice for a while, but she was a little too crazy for me. So I passed her down to the Super Ninja, who, Mr. Go, who was there a while, he left. And then they brought in a young kid named Howard from Japan. And Howard was like 6'6", 280 pounds. So, make a long story short, so I hooked Sherry up with the Super Ninja. Well, about 2 months later, the Super Ninja was all covered with scratches and gouges, and he weighs 220 pounds. Sherry's killing him. So, there's a funny story, but anyway, he was the Super Ninja for a while, and Sherry was there, but I think she was with Buddy Rose and Doug Summers,
yeah.
and they were working with they were bringing up the Midnight Rockers, you know, Sean and
Marty. I guess that was before you got married to Vern's daughter.
Yeah. Vern's daughter. Yeah, I mean, towards the end of that run, we kind of hooked up and kept it a secret, and then we took off. When I went back to the NWA for a while to do that thing with Baby Doll and Dusty, that, you know, me and Kathy got married in '88. And then Baby Doll got fired shortly after that. And then I wound up, Vern wanted me to come back to the AWA and wanted me to wrestle Lawler. And because then Lawler had the belt.
Right.
And he wanted me to come up and work with Lawler. And the thing with Dusty blew up because they fired Baby Doll. So I said, okay. And he gave me a good deal because I married his daughter. You know, so we made out like thieves. And so I went back up there. And before I got there, Lawler disappeared, took the belt and left. So him and Jerry had some dispute over money or whatever it was. I really don't even know the story, except Jerry took off with the belt, and then Vern had to threaten to sue him to get the belt back, so Jerry pounded it out with a hammer or something and sent it back.
Right.
And that's the reason that when I had the belt, it was a new design, because the old belt was ruined. And the new design belt that I had was shaped like the original belt first made ever back in the 1800s, and it was shaped like a police badge, if you look at it close, because the first belt ever was made by the Boston Police Gazette for Frank Muldoon in the 1800s. That was the first heavyweight champion of the world pro wrestler. So that was a copy of the first original belt shaped like a badge. You know, the main part of it.
I guess Jerry Lawler had won that match in a title match against Kerry Von Erich, but you told a story that Kerry Von Erich's foot actually came off in a match.
Poor Kerry. Nice kid, but he had obviously some problems. But he got in a motorcycle accident and tore his foot off. Basically, all he had was below the ankle. You know, it was gone. So he had a specially made, you know, shoes and boots, and if you see him at the beach, he'd be walking around getting a tan, but he'd have his wrestling boots on because he had no foot. And we're doing a TV for at the Showboat in Vegas for ESPN, and I'm watching in some of the matches, and Kerry is wrestling a match with Colonel De Beers, and Colonel was a classic, but Kerry, this was a big secret. I mean, very few people knew about Kerry's foot, and De Beers didn't know. Yeah, very few people knew at that time. Big secret. So Kerry's having a match with Colonel De Beers. Kerry falls down. De Beers grabs him to put them in an ankle lock, and all of a sudden, pop! The boot comes off, and Colonel De Beers is looking at this boot in his hand, and he looks over, and there's this leg sticking up that ends in just a little, you know, stump with no foot, and De Beers goes, ah! And he throws the boot up in the air because it freaked him out. And Kerry, it was the weirdest thing. It was like people were in shock because it didn't register what they're seeing. Kerry rolled over, grabbed the boot, went out of the ring, rolled under the ring, and was gone for maybe 5 minutes. Which seemed like an eternity when you're filming TV. Right. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And De Beers is standing in there, and we're to the referee going, what in the hell was that? I pulled the guy's foot off, like he didn't. And then all of a sudden, Kerry rolls back out, gets back in the ring. De Beers is looking at him, he comes over, and they start the match again, and kept going like nothing happened. And the people are going, did something happen? I mean, it was the weirdest, surrealistic kind of thing. And De Beers came back, he was freaked out. And the people, I don't even know if it registered, because it seemed like something that was so unreal that that couldn't have happened, but the whole audience was dead quiet. And then got back into the match once it got going, like nothing happened. It was really a unique kind of thing.
I guess Kerry had to explain himself after to...
I don't think they said a word. I mean, he never went on TV or said anything. I think they wanted to keep it a secret. Okay. I don't even know if they ever aired that on ESPN. That might have been cut out.
Right, because then you guys would tape numerous shows.
Yeah, we do. Like, every month we go there and party and do 3 shows. Never slept in Vegas.
And winning the Western States Championship when you came back to the NWA, I guess you're still the Western States Champion.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Every time I went to the NWA, something weird happened where I wasn't there long and left again. Once Baby Doll got fired, then I was in the AWA a little bit, took off with Vern's daughter, came down there, the Dusty thing didn't work. But then they came up with the Western States Heritage Championship, probably because the WWE came up with the Intercontinental, who knows why. And they came up with this belt. Barry Windham had it. Me and Baby Doll, I think, screwed him out of it. Now, this is the Western States Heritage Championship that was never defended west of the Mississippi. In the Carolinas and up the coast, we were doing some shows in the Northeast. And I think I won it from Barry Windham in Long Island. So I got the Western States Heritage Championship now. And now this time, they make an announcement. We go to TV one day and a guy in a suit we don't know is standing there. He says, well, I just want to let you people know that the Crockett's have sold out. Ted Turner, TBS, has bought the NWA. So you'll all be working for us soon. And at first, you won't think we know what we're doing. But then after a while, you'll realize that we know what we're doing. The reality is they didn't know what they were doing. But here's what happened with the NWA. Because of the way it was booked, and that's a little bit of Dusty-ish, over time they weren't making any money, blowing too much on private jets.
Going outside of their territory.
And basically the Crockett's mother cut off the money. So the NWA was either going out of business, but Ted Turner was a big fan, loved wrestling, plus it was the show that gave him the ratings when Channel 17 was UHF and the boys were there at 7 a.m. to do, and that put him in business. And he loved it, and he was always respectful of, helping him out. That's why it was always on TBS. So it was announced that TBS bought it. And then right after TBS bought it and the NWA was over, and so I got the Western States Heritage Championship, but there's no more NWA. It was about to become the brand new WCW, which was basically nothing but the NWA guys. But at that time, then Vern called me back, and that's when I went back to AWA, do Lawler, but then he left. And then shortly after that, the interesting part of this story, I don't know if you have any questions, but this leads into it. After I went up there and had the belt and did that for a while, it was time for the AWA to close down. ESPN didn't want it on cable no more, and Vern was going through too much money trying to compete, an old school promoter. And now there was two major, USA and TBS were now battling nationwide. And Vern came up with an idea. He wanted to try one more idea to not close the doors.
The cross-promotion angle.
The invasion angle. He came up with an idea where he wanted the AWA to invade the brand new WCW. And at that time, the new Sting has already wrestled Flair 150 times. So his idea was I was the champ, Sting, the new guy was the champ, I would come down and the AWA would invade the new TBS show, and I would wrestle Sting, and then the invasion kind of storyline. But for some reason, Jim Barnett now is still there. He, the old school promoter, he thought that... He
was a consultant, right?
Yeah, he was a consultant for Ted, but he used to run it in the old days.
Yeah.
And one with Bill Watts and that. So Jim was still there, and he said, if Larry Zbyszko comes down here, he could take Sting and just stretch him and hook him and beat him and then take the belt, and then we'll have no belt if he wanted to. He was afraid, he knew I could stretch Sting and take the belt, which I never would have done. It would have been big business. Would have been
bad for your money.
Well, yeah. I mean, it would have been good business to do it. But anyway, the invasion angle, they didn't go for it. So Vern shut the door, but WCW wanted me because, I was still over in the big name. So I came down and got a hell of a deal. And the reason I mentioned that story was because years down the road, that invasion idea came to life, and it was called the New World Order. It was the same idea we had, but then when Eric Bischoff, who was from the AWA, and Greg Gagne was in the office, and I was there, and things happened, we said, hey, that invasion idea, we'll just do it with Scott Hall, Naz, and it'll look like the WWE is invading us. And it was the hottest thing ever.
And it probably would have been even hotter with the AWA because it was such an established company. And
well, it would have been hot back then too because it was novel, it never happened, and holy shit. Yeah, it would have been just as hot, but the way it happened, I mean, you know, the NWO, you still watch Raw, you'll still see an NWO shirt every show out there.
Yeah. And just to close off AWA, what were your memories of Eric Bischoff from those days?
Well, Eric was a hustler. And it was kind of interesting because he showed up and he was, you know, kind of selling tickets and hustling rubber ninja stuff and and we had an announcer, Larry Nelson. And Larry was a bad alcoholic. And he was about to go to jail because he never paid any DUIs and blah, 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 blah. And one day we all show up for interviews, there's no Larry Nelson. We find out Larry left his apartment full of stuff, his car, thing, he disappeared because he did not want to go to jail for being a drunk. Larry disappeared. So we go, well, Eric's a good looking guy, here you do this. So I did Eric's first interview with him as the announcer. So we made Eric the announcer because we were stuck. So his first interview was horrible. I started laughing and we had to redo it, you know. But then I kind of befriended him and helped him out because I was with the company and you know, he's on TV, so I want him to know stuff. And I was a pilot, so I was flying planes. And I'd take Eric with me in the plane and take him as we flew to a town and give him advice how to broadcast. And he got into flying. So he got himself a private pilot's license. And we became good friends. And more important than that, he listened to me. So when the New World Order and the WCW, and he wound up being the executive producer, he didn't know what to do. But when I laid out the New World Order and how Scott Hall comes in and how this happened, he listened. And that's why it was as hot as it was, because my programming, you know, was the one that got it off the ground right. Because Eric was the boss and he'd listen.
Were you booking at all in AWA in the later years?
Well, I wasn't really booking, but I was a little bit. I mean, some stuff with me, you know. But we were generally on the same page, and when we brought guys in, we already knew what the deal was or how long they'd be here, and you know.
Is there any specific reason you never wrestled Ric Flair?
No, not really. It was just we're just in different territories. When I was getting my break in New York, he was breaking in down south after Valentine's wreck. And then we were both heels, so, you know, it was always good guy versus bad guy, so heels never really wrestled each other. It was rare. So it just never happened. Now, one time, it's kind of a funny story, but the wrestling business was weird in the old days with this brotherhood thing. And back in the old days when Flair was getting his start down south, I was getting my big break in New York. And all the publicity, the mags, and Flair was getting jealous. And he made comments to the boys about, that Zbyszko, he ain't crap. It's only because of Bruno, you know, I'll take care of Zbyszko. So the word got to me through the grapevine of the boys. So I said, well, you tell Flair whenever he wants to see who the better guy is, let me know. And in those days, that was a way of saying, okay, we get in the ring, this is going to be a shoot, brother. And then some years down the road in WCW, they wanted me and Flair to work with each other because we've both been around 20 years and we've never wrestled each other. But then Flair didn't want to do it. He thought I would hurt him and wanted something else, but that's when he like took off with the belt or something and went to the WWE. He jumped ship. It was right before that they wanted me and him to wrestle because we never did. It would have been good. It would have been really great. But he was afraid and then he took off.
When you first came to WCW, you were teaming with Terry Taylor. What are your memories of that team?
I teamed with Taylor or Arn?
Apparently Taylor. This might be another thing on the internet that's not true.
I mean, it's not saying I might never have had a match somewhere where me and Terry tagged, but I don't remember being Terry's tag partner.
Apparently it was, he was part of the York Foundation.
Well, he was, him and some chick.
Yeah, Alexander.
The computer thing,
Marlena.
Yeah. But I wasn't involved in that.
Yeah.
In fact, in 1991, I wasn't even in the ring. I was doing the broadcasting.
Right. So the broadcasting didn't start till after your Arn Anderson?
Yeah, after me and Arn. And that should have went longer, but that was a Bill Watts cluster.
Well, the Terry Taylor thing's on your Wikipedia, so just for anyone watching this.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Me and Terry are good friends, and he works at the Performance Center.
Right.
You know, so me and him have been working together on some stuff, but I don't remember. Oh, I mean, I might have had a match with him down the road. It might have been one, but it wasn't like a WCW thing or anything.
I guess he struck out a little bit in the gimmick department when he had his big push in the WWE.
Oh, with the Red Rooster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that was because I didn't. When that happened, I didn't even know Terry.
Right.
You started after I did, but I heard the thing, and you know, I guess that, and I know we don't know what happened to it. I guess it just didn't get over.
I guess I'll have to ask Terry if I ever talked to him.
I mean, I really don't know the story of. I wasn't there.
From what I understand, I guess he didn't like the gimmick and didn't put as much effort as he should have into getting it over, and it faded out. And then he was an announcer, I think, for a while. Then they let him beat Terry Taylor for a while. Then he switched to WCW.
But Terry's a sharp guy. I mean, he wound up with TNA, and now he's back at WWE. He's always, you know, one of them guys like in the office.
And everyone liked the Enforcers tag team with Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and what were your memories of that?
You know what, to be honest with you, some of these brain cells, I'm not exactly sure how it started. Because I was never really a tag team guy. I'd rather be a single guy. But I was like getting close to 40. And Arn was there, and he was always like a tag team guy with the Horsemen or him and Flair a lot or whatever. And Arn was a great talent, not bad on the interviews. But for some reason, I can't remember how we won. Might have been Ole that put us together a couple times. And me and Arn walked out, and when we walked out, the people popped. And we looked at each other and went, oh, you gotta be kidding. And we felt the old school heat that was already gone with most of the new guys. People bought me and Arn. For some reason, we complimented each other. The Enforcers, that we were two guys that have been around.
Builds too.
Yeah, and you know, but they bought it, and it got over good. We broke Barry Windham's arm and beat up Bill Kazmaier, and it was going really good. And I enjoyed that. In fact, I had this idea because of the Enforcers that me and Arn can do one come out dressed like a 1920s gangster with a Tommy gun going boom, 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 boom. But TBS, oh, we can't have any guns on TBS. Meanwhile, they're showing every Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, blowing everybody up. We couldn't do that on wrestling, so that never happened. But then Bill Watts came in and basically messed up the whole thing with the Dangerous Alliance, and I didn't want to be part of any group. So I checked out of that group and then wound up doing the broadcasting.
Was the Enforcer thing before the incident that Arn had with Sid?
Yeah, that was way before.
What was that all about?
You know, I'm not sure. I wasn't on that tour.
Right, you were commentating, I think.
Yeah, I remember hearing the story, but I don't know. They got an argument in the bus, and Sid, you know, he's not the nicest guy in the world, kind of a jerk. You know, just ambushed him. But I really don't know.
Yeah, you weren't there to witness it.
If I was the company and some guy attacked you, other guy with scissors or whatever the hell, chair or something, you'd get rid of him.
Well, Sid was let go, I guess, and then he went to WWE. And Arn remained on. So you already brought this up a little bit, that you went on to commentary. I guess that was after the Enforcers, after you got injured?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was lucky. Injury-wise, I was always lucky. But when me and Arn were the Enforcers, and then they started the Dangerous Alliance, I said, you know, I don't want to be part of a group. And the business was changing. Watts was in there, and he was an idiot. And his idea of wrestling was now anybody that was 40 was over the hill old news, and I'm getting rid of you, I'm pushing new young guys. But the only new young guy he pushed was Eric Watts. In fact, when Eric Watts beat Arn Anderson on TV, people started chanting, you know, bullshit, man. They didn't buy it. And I saw that, I was horrified, so I said, oh, my knee hurts. I think I need a scope. So I pulled myself out of the group and not wanting to put up with any nonsense from Bill Watts. And it was a great company, so they paid for it. And then right after when I was recouping with the knee scope, so I had a few months off, I got a call from one of the directors or producers that said, hey Larry, we fired Jesse and we got some pre-taped shows. Can you come down and do the color commentating for us while you're rehabbing? Because we're stuck. And I was, you know, under contract getting paid felt guilty after a while sitting there for a couple of months. So I said, yeah, I'll come down. I never did any broadcast. So I went down and did some color commentary over a few taped shows they had. And this one guy runs through the door, and he's going, TBS guy. He goes, son of a bitch, that was the best broadcasting I've ever heard. Did you ever think about being a color guy? I would love to have you do the color on these shows. And at first I was like, I'm trying to be Bruno Sammartino here. You think I'm Tony Schiavone? I was like insulted. And then I'm thinking about, but I didn't tell them that. I'm thinking, yeah, broadcaster. And then they came back, but that was in the days when it was a ridiculous money giveaway that the company had to give away, or people would get fired because they wouldn't be doing their job giving money away. It was insanity. Yeah. So they came back to me and said, hey Larry, now this was a job that now was like a day a week because I would voice over the taped shows. Nitro didn't start yet. And they came back to me with a thing and said, Larry, we'll pay you, here's a contract, we'll pay you this much money. It was well over 6 figures, to do the broadcasting. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna make more money working a day a week talking. Plus I'll be on all the shows, so I'll be getting publicity. And the other guys, 40, 41, are all getting hurt and getting phased out.
You don't have to travel as much, I guess.
Yeah. So I went, this guy's got to be insane. I said, yeah, I'll take it. So then I took it, and I took it under the terms like, well, can I be an employee? So they made me an employee. So that worked out great because I had all the benefits, the health benefits, all kind of stuff. I mean, it was a great company. So I had a 10-year run that was great. I worked a day a week, and then when Nitro kicked in, I flew out 1 day a week. So it was great.
And I forgot to ask you about working with Steve Austin in the Dangerous Alliance.
I worked with him, I think, one time. And that's what I wanted to get out of it. I think I worked with Steve one time, and then after that I saw what was going on. I went, oh, my knee, because I didn't want to be in a group. When you're in a group, you kind of go down as far as the group, but you always want to be here if you can.
Would you have expected him to go on to the success that he had in those days?
Well, Steve was a good guy, but I never would have thought, because it was such an opposite look. I mean, you had a guy stunning Steve with the chick, and he had the long blonde hair, and it was such the opposite. It was almost like a Beach Boy hippie look. It was such the opposite of the shaved head, little goatee, tough guy. I would never have thought that Steve did that, but when he did it, it was great. And I'm going to tell you one of the reasons it got over. One, Steve was very good. And when he did that look, for those days, it was kind of a new look of the era. He went through the hippie look, he went through this look, and now he went to a generation where the balder guys were shaving their heads because they didn't want to be bald. Right. But he came along at the time when cable television was loosening the rules of broadcasting. He was the first guy that came on television and could say this, I'm gonna catch a beer and I'm gonna kick your ass. He was the first guy that could look tough and that could talk tough. Even when he was saying kick your ass on TV, TBS, TNT, you could not say ass on TV. Right. Steve came along at the time when he was the first guy that could really talk like a tough guy and say words you couldn't say on TV before. Those right timing and the right look. And when every once in a while that happens, and now you're in a spot where you're kind of coming down, and I got a guy that's the right time with the right look for down the road.
And when you were a commentator, you worked with Missy Hyatt a bit. What was that like?
A little bit. Well, Missy was a cartoon. Poor kid. She was in fact, I used to go out with her a little bit when she was 18 and coming around the business. We dated for about 6 months. And when she was 18, she was a hottie, But after 6 months, she drove me crazy because she wanted to be in the business. So she was already like moving in, taking over the apartment, and I passed her on to somebody, Tommy Rich or somebody. And she was running around telling all the boys that she was Missy Hyatt and her dad was Hyatt Hotel. So Eddie Mansfield, another one of the boys, thought she was Hyatt Hotel and had lots of money, so he married her and found out she had nothing, and he wound up with a crazy wife, because Missy was a little out there. But she can get away with it because she was so hot at the time. But she was a sweet kid, and always nice to me, and we always had a good time together. You know, we got to the limelight, and you know, it was fun for a while, but she was I was a little more down to earth than Sherry and Missy and some of these.
Did Missy end up getting it deported at the end?
Huh?
Did she end up getting, I know she was doing nude pictures with Sonny, but I'm just wondering if she ever actually got into porn.
Oh, I don't know.
Sonny actually crossed that bit.
You know what? I don't know. I don't do Facebook. I don't do tweets. I don't do gossip. I'm basically a hermit.
Right.
I'll do WWE stuff. I'll do an autograph section or something special like this once in a while.
Yeah.
And then my fun is not leaving the house.
Right. And just, what are your thoughts on wrestlers getting into porn these days? There's been X-Pac, China, Hulk Hogan even came out.
An idiot.
Could you ever imagine this in the 70s?
But to me, I'm going to tell you how I feel about it personally, because I would like to kick every member of the Supreme Court in the ass for even having the stupidity to say that porno is freedom of speech. It is not a freedom of speech. It is pathetic. It is a downgrade insult to humanity. It's artificial sex. To me, it's a disgrace. It should not be in existence. And the Supreme Court judge should be kicked in the ass for saying that's freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. That is absolute an insult to humanity, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I don't see it. It shouldn't be on. To me, and it's even got to a level where people say, oh, he's a porno star. There's no such thing. He's a perverted, degenerate moron. And all they're doing it for is money. And if wrestlers do it, it's because some poor schmuck didn't save his money and was broke and had to do it.
And what are your thoughts on all the problems Hulk Hogan's had in the past couple of years? I guess he doesn't have many problems now that he won his
well, in 20 years when they can start collecting it, if they have any money after all the appeals, he'll probably be dead. You know what, to be honest with you, I never think about the Hulk. I mean, when the Hulk came around, I was doing my Bruno thing. They brought Terry in because they needed a big guy for Andre to beat up. So after about 6-8 months of Andre beating the snot out of the Hulk, he came up to me one day and said, "You're my hero, brother. Give me some advice. I'm getting tired of getting beat up by Andre every night because I'm just his whipping boy." And I gave him the advice. I said, "Hey, you've been here in the WWF getting beat up by Andre every night. The best thing for you, because you're a big guy, and you can move, you know, you get in the drift, is get the hell out of here and go to a different territory." And he listened, he left. He went to the AWA, and that's where they kind of gave him a break, turned him into a baby face, and things were changing. But then our paths never really crossed after that. And I think at the beginning, Terry was a nice guy, but I think as years went by, I think he got a little too big in the head for a while, and it bit him in the ass. And some other guys did that too. Lex Luger was kind of a narcissistic, kind of ego kind of guy, that when something bad happened to him, you kind of laughed and went, "Hey, karma, brother." So not that they're bad guys, and he's probably a much better person now because he brought hell upon himself when he got a big prima donna head. But I didn't deal with guys like that.
Right, so your dealings with him in WCW were...
Yeah, I didn't really deal with him. I talked to Eric, but I was, you know, the announcing, and I did a special thing with Eric and Scott because they were novelties, but the Hulk, we were getting him ready for the Goldberg transition thing, but I never really dealt with the Hulk. Hulk was a good manipulator, and Bischoff kind of fell for it. Unfortunately, the Hulk kind of swerved Bischoff into giving the farm away to where too many guys got not only a big contract, but the clauses where they could do wherever they wanted, so they killed the programming.
And working with Gordon Soley as an announcer.
Oh, Gordon, the Dean? No, that was interesting. It was fun. They brought him into TBS, and Ted Turner loved Gordon. We'd be out there in the hallway having a cigarette. Gordon smoked a pack, you know, an hour. And Ted Turner and Jane Fonda would walk by with her big sunglasses, and they go, "Hey, hi, how you doing, guy? Hey, hi, Ted," you know. He'd walk by, and then we'd go to Reggie's to have lunch, and I'd have a sandwich, and Gordon would have a drink and another pack of cigarettes. And then we'd go back and he was a night off. He used to be the one-man show, so it was easy. And I picked up stuff from him, but it was easy doing it. He was used to be a one-man show for years. That was a color guy. It was easy and smooth.
And I've heard he could drink a lot in Silvermane, pretty normal.
Oh yeah, he was used to it. Yeah.
And another really famous, well, I guess right up there with one of the best ever is Jim Ross.
No, Jim was great. I mean, it's really too bad. If you listen to the announcing, I don't know what happened to it, but JR, I mean, if you watch Raw from some years ago and the Rock's flying through a table getting smashed, JR's having a heart attack. Oh my God, get the EMTs, oh my God, everything through. I mean, he was great and get people all, I mean, the announcers, and I told them, I said, you guys don't realize it's basically an underrated job, and I realized that when I was doing it. It's kind of an underrated job of importance, but all the hard work in the production and in the wrestling, the announcers are the ones that bring it to life. And you can see the visual, but when you hear the audio go with it, that's what brings it to life. And if you're not a good announcer, I mean, I'm watching stuff now with some guys getting killed laying to the table, and the announcers are talking about, hey, well, next week I'm going to be at that. And what the hell are you talking about? The guy So, I mean, JR was great, kind of like at the end. Shivani was great, and, I mean, I think they need a little brush up on today's announcers, to be honest with you.
What would be your best advice to a wrestling announcer to become better, I guess?
Well, what they have to do is, it's the same thing I had to do. When I started announcing, I had to drop the Larry Zbyszko. I mean, I was a hated asshole. I couldn't announce as that because my job was to put the guys on TV over and make them like somebody, whether they were good guys or bad guys or hated. So what I had to do was I softened, but I approached it like a fan. And what the announcers today have to do is that they can't watch it like they're part of the business or they wrestled for 20 years. They have to watch it like they're a fan. And when they see something happen, because they've been in the ring 20 years, they can say, oh God, well, this is the way you put the pressure on, see it right there, that's what got me, and and they have a credibility. But in terms of emotion, you have to watch it like a fan. So when something happens, you go, wow! I mean, I would raise my voice at certain times where if people weren't in the room, they'd hear the TV and they'd have to come back in the room to see what was going on, because the levels of excitement changed. So that's part of working the two.
And speaking of, you had to drop the Larry Zbyszko character, you ended up coming out of retirement a couple times as an announcer. The first time was against Steve Regal.
Yeah, Regal.
And you were a huge baby face.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that feud?
Well, that was great. I mean, I was doing the broadcasting for maybe a couple of years. And then, I mean, even then, in the mid-90s, I was sick of saying, wow, what a clothesline. Today, it's all they say. What a clothesline, another clothesline. Too many damn clotheslines. So then they had this guy Regal show up. And he had a pompous look, Lord Regal. They gave him a butler, and he came out with that attitude. And I could feel the crowd hated him. He got heat. Like the good old days, just standing there with that smug look, because people believed right away, what an asshole. He was good, and he could wrestle. He was a wrestler, and too many of the guys we had at that time that were coming in with the Nasty Boys and the Public Enemy and the Snyders and Sting and Lex, and all they did was clotheslines and stupid nonsense. Lex was 3 clotheslines and the torture rack. That's all I knew. And so here's a guy. So no one could really have a good match with Regal because they didn't know. And I'm sitting here going, let me do something special, damn it, because I was getting the itch, and before I got too old, I saw a chance. So I did kind of a Bruno coming out of retirement, and we worked a little thing where I wrestled Regal, and it was a novelty. So I knew it would get over for a short time. So it was my idea, and I wanted to give this guy some good exposure, and at the same time show the wrestlers in the back, you can have a match without a clothesline. I wrestled Regal 30 minutes on TBS, not one clothesline. And Brian Pillman was running around going, this is a clinic, they didn't do one clothesline. And that was 20 years ago, so you imagine how sick fans are of clotheslines now. But
actually, they probably just stopped watching most of it.
Yeah, unfortunately. But just so Regal and me, so we had some of the best matches I had in terms of wrestling matches and stuff was with Regal, because he was good, and we did about a few months worth, and you know, it worked out great, and it was very good. And then I did it again when the New World Order started. It got so hot, and then there was some things I felt with me and Scott. I said, "Nah, we got to do this to people, you know, they want it." So I booked in everything the way it started, you know.
Was that before Scott really got into his downward spiral there with his alcohol?
Yeah, that was before, yeah. I mean, after the big success,
yeah.
You know, like, will success spoil Rock Hunter? Yeah, Scott, after that big success, he had some problems.
And I understand you hit a ratings record for the Regal match on Saturday night, and then for Bischoff match and your Scott Hall match, those were 2 pay-per-view buy rates.
Those are the biggest buy rates they ever did.
We recently interviewed Vince Russo. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, personally, I mean, he's an all right guy. Professionally, he has no business in the business. He's just a guy from Long Island that would sell CDs, and then for some reason never wrote a movie or a book, and just said he was a writer in the WWE. For some reason thinks they need a bunch of writers, and he was just one of them, but he didn't know anything. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he shouldn't have been in the business. He was not good.
I like one of the comments that I'd heard you say about they had Goldberg, but for some reason Arquette and Russo were the champion.
Yeah, I mean, you could put the whole thing in a nutshell. You got millions of people chanting Goldberg, who looks like a beast, and the heavyweight champion of the world is Vince Russo, the writer, who shouldn't even be there. So I don't need to say anything else.
And what happened to Eric's ego? Did it just go out of control there towards the end?
Well, I think, will success spoil? I think when it got so hot, it was so huge, so big, and we didn't think it would get that huge and big. I mean, I knew it was good, and I programmed it right, but holy shit, 11 ratings? I mean, and then Eric all of a sudden went from being the executive producer that would listen to me and a little bit to Greg. All of a sudden he became the executive producer who was the big shot now, dealing with the Hulk and that. And these guys are ripping him off left and right, and he didn't know it. And he kind of stopped listening to me a little bit. And then he found out the hard way,
What do you think ultimately led to the end of WCW? It was a bad last couple of years.
It was a horrible year because they had the Russo guy in there, and the head of the company was an accountant. And what happened was, Ted Turner loved it. If Ted Turner still had 51%, WCW would still be on. It should be on. It was their highest rated money. I mean, what happened was they sold out in the business deal to AOL. The idiots at AOL didn't want sports. They didn't want wrestling. They didn't want basketball. They didn't want the Braves. And part of their deal, and it was in their deal, Turner gave up more than 51%. And the WCW was just canceled. Now it stayed there a year and a half or a year or so after it was really unpublicized but officially canceled because of the contracts they had with pay-per-view outlets and arenas, and so they had to keep going to fulfill the contracts that they had. But they were basically, the show was canceled. I knew it, Bobby Heenan knew it. We were already gone a year before WCW was over because we knew it. And then that's when it got so horrible because Russo didn't have a clue what he was doing. Arquette had it. Goldberg, all the heat, I mean, he kept some of it, but it wasn't as good as it would have been.
They turned him heel.
Yeah, it was just stupid. And the accountant who was running the company, his job, until it was officially off the air, that year they had to kill, his job was to spend as little money as possible. Vince, when he took Russo, it was just some cheap price he took him, and he bragged to me, this guy, Bill, he goes, hey, I got one of the WWE's writer, man. I stole him right away. He wasn't even under contract. I said, Bill, he wasn't under contract because he ain't jack shit. He wasn't under contract because he's a nobody. What are you thinking? Oh, I can't spend money. I mean, it was
even Bret Hart. They took him when they didn't want him in WWE anymore.
Yeah.
You ended up going to TNA for a while.
Yeah, well, you know, I came after WCW shut down. I came to Florida because I wanted to play pro golf on the senior tour. I wanted to give it a try. I had so much time through the 90s, and I golfed a lot. It was very good. And I turned 50, WCW was over, so I said, well, I'm coming to Florida and I'm playing golf. So for a couple of years I was down here playing, and then TNA was starting up, and they offered me money to come in and do some stuff. So I said, hey, I'm here, so it was fun. Do a little TNA, go to all the rides for free in all the parks, you know, Disney and Universal, and pick up some cash while I was doing the pro golf thing. So it worked out good for a while. And then I felt sorry for them because, again, now they're listening to the wrong people. You know, and I tried to tell them and they wouldn't listen. So I said, well, I wish you the best of luck. Goodbye.
And while you were there, you worked with AJ Styles for a bit.
I did, yeah, I did. Yeah, years ago in AJ Styles, they were thinking of having me be his manager or something, or a trainer from Georgia. And then me and AJ had a match on one of the early TNA shows up in Nashville, I think. And it was a great match. I mean, it was really good. AJ's very good. You know, AJ, good guy, was very good. We had a hell of a match. In fact, when we had a little head suit, you know, suit knockout, the one lawyer kept saying, that was a great match you had with AJ. And that was a WWE lawyer kept telling me how great I was.
And the rumor on the internet is Vince Russo canceled the angle of you being his AJ Styles' manager. Is that true? Or?
I don't know. I mean, he may have, or he may have come in and made changes, but...
Because I guess you guys didn't get along.
Well, I wouldn't do what he said because it was stupid.
And the last thing about TNA is you had a little feud with Raven.
Yeah, a little goofy thing with Raven at the end. For some reason, I lost my mind out of boredom, and they talked me into some hair gimmick where he shaved my head a little bit. And the reality, I used to have it long, so I figured I never had my hair short. Let me see what it looks like. But then after I cut it short, you know, some guys look good when they got their hair super short, or even if they shave it bald. Some guys got a good head for it. I don't. I look like Frankenstein with a face. At least I got hair, so I let it regrow, and I never cut it short again. But I wanted to see what it looked like.
What did you think of him as a wrestler? Because I guess you probably commentated a lot of his matches.
Raven?
Yeah.
Well, he was a unique character at the time when he first started and sat down in the corners. And I mean, he wasn't bad. He made himself a little different character in days when everybody was looking to try to be some kind of character. I mean, you know, DeMott was the laughing man that did the big insult, and then he had some other guys. Who was the one blonde kid that was kind of like the dumb guy, and Barry would bounce a golf ball? Lodi. I mean, so you had a bunch of guys that weren't big guys, but trying to find some character, some niche. And Raven did a good job in making a unique kind of character out of it. Yeah, I wouldn't consider him a big star kind of guy. He wasn't a Goldberg or an Austin, but there's a utility, you know, guy to have around. He's okay.
Is it true that there were some problems in WCW with the flock when they were sitting in the audience smoking and drinking and taking pills?
I mean, I did the broadcasting and talked over what I saw, but I was already in my 40s, and all these guys were in their 20s or late 20s, and if they were morons, I didn't hang around them.
Yeah.
I did my gig, I went home, next day I was on the golf course. So I didn't, there's a different generation, and I didn't mess with them. And
you're in the WWE Hall of Fame now, as we can see by your ring.
Yes.
I guess it's been 4 years now, but I guess maybe a decade ago that didn't seem likely. What led to you mending the fences with the WWE? Not because of your talent, let me make that clear, but because, I guess, political situations, maybe due to...
Well, I don't think it was so much that. I think it was a matter of what they wanted for years was Bruno to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And Bruno and the McMahons butted heads a lot. And Vince tried his best for years to get Bruno in the Hall of Fame. And Bruno, you know, at one time really was outspoken about the steroid abuse and some other things. And so there was kind of a friction, but Vince honestly did try to, you know, get him. But And then the time went by, but I wasn't in the WWE with all the big footage, so they had other guys that they could use. But what happened was, it got to a point where Vince really wanted Bruno to be in the Hall of Fame, didn't consider it the Hall of Fame, and how Bruno in it and all that. And as the years went by, the company went through some ups and downs, and it had a problem with the steroids. If some guy gets hurt, in the old days, they'd fire you. You're gone. You get hurt today, they'll take care of you. Even the old timers like Scott Hall, who had problems with too much, they'll put him to rehab 10 times. I put a guy to rehab once. If he didn't do it, screw you. They're much nicer than I am. Yeah. And what happened was, as time went by, Bruno started feeling like a hypocrite, like he used to knock him, but then if he went in the Hall of Fame, he'd feel like a hypocrite. But then Vince really tried, and then Paul, Triple H, came into the picture, and then, had a talk with me and wanted me to come back with the WWE and wanted to know if I would help him get Bruno back in. And I always believe that Bruno should be, definitely. So I had to talk with Bruno about some stuff, and I'm basically the guy that, through some months, kind of got them two together. And so I'm the one that kind of got that, 30 years of animosity healed. I was a big part of that. So I kind of was involved in getting Bruno in that. And so everything, after a cool story of the old days, the old eras, headbutting, territory wars, me and Bruno and Vince, we're all back home where we started, and it's really cool.
When we talked to Dominic DeNucci, he said there was also quite a large payoff for Bruno going to the Hall of Fame.
I'm sure there was some deal and Bruno got a good chunk, but it wasn't like outside, of the Hall of Fame. I think what some deals involved, because the company changed so much over the years in terms of merchandise, that you could go back 20 years to all the video of Bruno matches that had been sold that, because Bruno wasn't a part of it, didn't get any royalties. So I think they probably worked out a deal to where Bruno got what he deserved.
And you're under a Legends contract now. Yeah,
I got a Legends deal. And
is Bruno still under a Legends deal as well?
Probably.
What exactly is a Legends deal for the?
I'm not sure. You know what? At my stage of the game, I said, Legends deal, great. They send me royalties, and I'll be doing some more, appearances on some network shows. Now the network's going, and it makes me excited. I'm going down and helping them with the, some new talent, smarten them up. So, but I don't know what the Legends deal is. It's just something I think, you know what? Here, own me. Just let me help you, because you need it.
But some people on the internet and so forth think that it actually amounts to a good amount of money, but it's really more just money here and there, and they send you to autograph appearances.
Yeah, they can send you to appearances. I've been invited. I was already, I'll be at Mania in Orlando, so they'll pay you for that, and I get my royalty check every 4 months. I was on a video game last year, me and Arn, big ass check. So it's great, but you never know. Next year maybe not so much. If you do something else, then you get more.
And you're working at the Performance Center here and there as well with the.
Yeah, I'm putting some time in. I'm not getting involved with the main group of stuff because I want to be more of a private tutor. To a guy that will make money. So.
What would be your best advice for a wrestler that's in the wrestling business already and wants to make it to the next level?
Well, the best advice I can give you is, if you watch TV and you've watched it, you've seen a lot of the same thing going on for a long time. A lot of matches look the same. A lot of guys running into corners, running into clotheslines. The best advice I can give you, to you, it's got to be real. And you've got to see what's been going on and not do that. Otherwise, you're going to be the same old stuff. So you're better off looking at 1950s, watch some Gorgeous George, watch some Billy Graham, watch some Bruno. Watch a different era, because the last 15 years has been seen a lot. And I think people want to see some new stuff. They want to see, you have to believe it's real.
And if people want to follow you, do you have Twitter? I
don't do anything. I have a Twitter, I never tweet. If I want to send a tweet, I got to call my buddy
Right.
But I haven't sent a tweet, I don't think, since Waller had a heart attack.
And somebody operates a Facebook page for you.
Yeah, I got a Facebook page.
It's approved by you.
I don't even know how to get on it.
Right.
But there's promoters and people that will contact me, and then my guy will say, hey, some guy wants you to do an appearance somewhere, wants to know how much you'll charge them, you know.
So,
but I don't even know how to work it.
So if someone wants to contact you, that would probably be the best way to look up your the Facebook page.
Yeah, if they send me something on Facebook, you know, if it's worth money, I'll hear about it. If it's a request for a free picture, I won't hear about it.
Is your book still for sale that came out a few
years ago? I think it's still on Amazon. I don't know. I'm not a computer guy. I still have a Razor phone.
But basically you're retired and...
yeah, I'm kind of retired, semi-retired. I really enjoy getting involved with the young guys. I really enjoy kind of doing to the young guys what Bruno did to me. You know, he smartened me up and told me secrets when he didn't have to.
Right.
And I see a lot of guys that are going to be good, but I see a couple guys that could be great. So those guys, I'm going to help them out.
And to finish off, for all your fans that are going to watch this, do you have any message you'd like to give to them?
Oh yeah, well if you made it to 2 hours of this, God bless you, because I'm about had it. But hey, to all my fans, and you know what, it's really an exciting feeling because I do the annex signings at Mania for people all coming all over the world, and some independent signings. And I'm really amazed at how many fans I have that are young people. You know, that because of the network and because of YouTube, and I'm surprised how many people know who I am that are young people. And but again, you know, if it wasn't, I said it in my Hall of Fame speech, you know, professional wrestling, we got the greatest fans of all, and I hope all your dreams come true too.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with us, and good luck to you with your Legends contract and everything in the next year.
Well, thank you, and the Big L.